We are live.
All right, I'm going to start the show. Would you? Oh, I'd fuck me. I'd fuck me so hard. Welcome to the House of Auger show. My name is JT and the man of the house. Tonight with me are my co-hosts. Some of them are here and some of them are not. Sativa, Adam, Joel, Nicole, and Mac. For those who are here, say hello.
Hello.
All right.
I see Joel's username, but he hasn't said anything.
He's got a mouthful of dick, so there's really no... Oh, he's here! Oh, he finished his dick. Good for you, buddy.
I finished the dicks, and then I went and walked the dog, so I just got back in. You got to take a walk after a big bag of dicks, otherwise it just doesn't
You absolutely do.
Yeah.
That cardio is important, brother. We have a very special guest tonight. We have one of the House of Auger own, Clarisse. Hello, Clarisse.
Hello.
Now, your real name is Robin.
Indeed, it is not Clarisse, it is Robin. The mystery has been solved.
For the purposes of this
Doxer.
Interview, I know!
No, please don't.
I keep...
It'd be so boring for you.
That's as far as my doxing skills go.
Yeah, it'd be so time. Just don't. You'd be like, oh, look, this is the most boring person in the whole world.
I doubt that's true. I completely doubt that's true. We've had the most boring person in the world on this show already.
Yes, we did.
So I'm positive that you are far beyond that. So for the purposes of the rest of this, the rest of the show, I'm gonna call you Robin and not Clarisse. So
okay.
For everybody listening, Clarisse is Robin. When I say Robin, I mean Clarisse.
Not my split personality.
Real quick disclaimer, this is not a family-friendly show. We are going to be talking about all kinds of adult and mature material. We're going to make jokes. We're going to curse. And if you are easily offended or underage, you should probably not be on this. You should probably go ahead and check out now. Other than that, due to the shitty gear that I'm using, I get kicked every once in a while. So if I end up disappearing and coming back and I don't know what the fuck's going on, that's because I got kicked off the Discord server. But I've been getting better at it. So anyway, before we get into the interview, I'd like to talk about current events. Sorry, I'm a little sick, so I've got a little bit of...
Well, before you start with that, as is tradition, anybody that has questions for Robin/Clarisse can ask them in chat. Be sure to tag me. I'll be writing them all down, and then I will ask all of them in a Q&A at the end. So
yeah, questions. Everybody seems to really like you reading the questions, so that's a good thing. So current events. There's been a lot going on. Stormy Daniels got her fucking thing thrown out, right? And he called her a horse face, and everybody's upset about it. I don't know why everybody's upset. Like, did they forget he was Trump for a second? Like, this is what he does. He makes fun of people. Am I still there?
Yeah, you are.
Like,
yeah.
No, it's true though. I think like there for some reason there's still some faction of people that still think that the office of the presidency has some level of dignity left to it, and they're just deluding themselves. Like,
right. Well, number one, I don't know that I think it's been a long damn time since anyone could claim the office of the presidency.
Exactly. That was not a dig at Trump by any means.
Dignity at all. Second, that's kind of why he was elected, was because he's not your run-of-the-mill. You know, it's actually a thing I was thinking about, and I want to talk about that for a second. This whole situation with the horseface comment made me think about the fact that with everything going on after him being elected, like DC had a game, right? Like politics had a certain decorum. They had a certain there were certain rules by which you had to abide. There were certain there were ways you did things and ways that you behaved. You had to play by the rules in order to get anywhere in the game, which means you kind of you ended up corrupt somehow to some varying degree or another just by trying to get in there and be somebody. You weren't going to get anywhere high in the game giving the appearances. You had to speak properly, you had to wear the right suit, you had to do the right things, you had to rub the right shoulders, all of that noise. And Trump came in and fucking blew that all out of the water come the campaign, right? You know what I'm talking about? Am I still there?
Yeah, you are.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that was the outrage. I think that was number one, the outrage and the panic that happened after he got elected. During the campaign, everybody laughed at him because they thought, this guy doesn't play by the rules, so there's no way. And that had been the way of things for decades, if not longer. If you didn't play by the rules, you lost. And they watched this guy throw all the rules out the window and say 20 things a day that could fucking torpedo. And they were like, there's this Joe in hell. And then he fucking got elected and they lost their minds. They were like, how the fuck did this happen? And so they panic. They don't know what to do. They're freaking out. You got the left doing anything they can think of, no matter whether it fucking hurts them or not. They're not thinking. They're just not. I heard he got fucking Elizabeth Warren to fucking take a goddamn DNA test. How the fuck how does he continue to manipulate people into doing this shit? It's crazy. What he's done is he's changed things. And I kind of think that it's not only is it permanent, but I think it's for the better. Because the way the rules worked before is you were fake. You couldn't say how you really, you got that Project Veritas. They just put out a new thing where the McCaskill, is she a Senate member?
Claire McCaskill. Yes, she's a senator from Missouri.
Right. So her deal is that she has up to this point been playing the game of Democrat centrist, right? I'm as close to center as can be. But in reality, she's for extreme gun control. She's for all the Obama era policies. She's very extreme left, but she doesn't tell anybody that because she knows it'll cost her votes. And that's how the old game was. Well, I think everybody was tired of, and I think that's why Trump got elected, and I think he's changed everything. I think what's his name? Lindsey Graham. I had to think for a second. I was like, the girl who's a guy. Lindsey Graham. It's freaking out. It's as if Trump freed, for those who didn't want the change, they're panicking and they're doing stupid shit and they're fucking themselves over. And for those who are kind of,
uh-oh.
Yep, he must have gotten picked again. It's never good when that happens and he's on a tirade. It can take him a while.
The question is he sitting somewhere talking to himself by himself?
Yeah.
Everyone's listening to me. No one's listening to me.
He's on his phone, and because he has it up to his ear, he doesn't have a visual notification for when he's dropped.
Yeah, so he'll be talking.
He kind of just
himself.
has to stop talking first, and then get silence on the other end.
Yeah. It only he comes back quickly if someone else is talking, but when it's him, It can be a while.
Yeah, he's actually gotten really good at stealth dropping. Like he'll hide it.
I know.
Yeah.
He has.
Well, goddamn, I was sitting there talking to myself for I don't know how long.
It was
We
a
were
while.
just
It was definitely upper half.
Where'd I leave off?
What was the last
Something about
thing?
Lindsey Graham, and then
Yeah,
That
you
was
were
it.
talking
Oh,
about Instagram.
It cut me
Lindsey
off on the
Graham
Lindsey Graham thing.
2.0.
So Lindsey Graham, like, I feel like Lindsey Graham totally went, I'm free. Like, that's the other flip side of the coin. You've got those who want the rules to stay the same, and they're panicking and they're flipping out and they're doing stupid shit that's fucking them over. And you got those who are like, I don't have to play by the rules anymore. Fuck you and fuck you and fuck you too. Like, Lindsey Graham has gone off the fucking reservation.
oh,
And it's awesome.
It is amazing. I love
It's
Lindsey Graham
beautiful.
2.0. It is the
And
best software update ever.
It really is. It fucking is, dude. Thank you, McCain, for fucking dying. And then there's the fucking, I mean, it's not just Lindsay either. I feel like this change, this freeing, this sense of being freed of those rules, of the old rules of the game is sort of spreading. You've got that one guy. What's that video? I don't know. He's walking down the halls in the Senate House, I think. I forget his name. He's a tall, lanky dude. Anyway, these two women are waiting. They got their kids off to the side, and he starts walking up, and they're like, "Hey," and they start talking to him about Kavanaugh, and he turns to the kids and he goes, "Listen, I know your parents are using you as political tools right now, but I just want you to know that if anybody ever if anybody ever accuses you of false sexual allegations, you're going to be okay." And he totally ignores the fucking women.
I didn't hear about this.
Like,
Who was this?
Oh, there's a video of it.
Yeah, I posted the video. Gee, it's somebody I'd never heard of. Senator I did.
Yeah. But I mean,
Nice, though.
you've got people doing.
Oh, it was gorgeous.
It is. It's fucking amazing. And that shit right there would normally get you fucking out. You just can't. You couldn't do that. You could not do that. And now you've got people going, nah, fuck that. I'm going to speak my mind. And you know what? I guess on both sides, it's kind of true. You got fucking Maxine Waters speaking her mind. Fucking riot in the streets. Fucking harass them everywhere they are. Like, we get to see who all of them really are. And I kind of think that that's the biggest benefit.
I kind of agree. Like, given the binary choice between being honest about your crap and like trying to be all the like two-faced and everything, I would definitely prefer the way things are right now. Like, I think
absolutely.
His name is Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana.
Okay, yeah, I've never heard of him.
Fuck yeah, Louisiana, man. See, and this is the kind of shit, like, that guy, I'm going to start knowing and that's the beauty of it, is we're going to start to get to know who our fucking Senate is, who these senators are. We're going to go, that's the guy, that's Cassidy, that's the one who said, fuck you to those women. And like, what are your thoughts on all of this, Robin?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I love Lindsey Graham now. All of a sudden, this is the greatest thing. I mean,
you vote
he
for
just
Trump?
I actually didn't get a chance to vote last year when we did the whole election for president, being tied up with children and all. I decided I wasn't going to go to a polling place with kids because that was going to be a nightmare for everybody, including myself.
Sure.
But I definitely would have not voted for Hillary.
No.
I would have voted for anybody but her. Yeah, that would have been good. But yeah, these. Go ahead.
What are your opinions about Trump?
I mean, at first I thought it was just ridiculous. Like, how did this happen?
Sure.
That someone
I think everyone in the
like
country
this
was
ended up to be our
that.
president. But then it was like, it grew on me very fast because it's kind of like having my stepdad as president. So, there's no filter.
Dad and Trump.
Yeah, there's a lack of filter. lack of caring for one's emotions. Like, oh, this upsets you. Let me do more of that. Yeah, so I'm okay with it. It doesn't bother me at all.
I think the majority of the country is that way. I think it's funny that you have everybody. They're back to their talking specifically about mainstream media. They're back to the bullshit about polls. Like, according to all of mainstream media, the polls are showing that the Democrats are going to come out in droves, and there's going to be this blue wave. And I hear that and I think, yeah, well, you said that Hillary was going to win by a landslide too. I don't know that I trust your polls. I really don't know that
Yeah.
who are you really asking?
So
I don't know. I don't think they're accurate for sure. Like, even some of the ones where we are, we're pretty much in a very Republican rural area, and even some of our local things are like, oh, the certain Democrat candidate is doing so well and the Republicans doing so bad. And you're like, that's not really what's happening. I mean, you look around the town and everybody has signs in their yard for Republican. There are like 0 Democrat signs in anyone's yard. So, how are they getting these numbers?
I got a call from a lady for a senator in my area. They were, the guy who's running against the incumbent.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, he's a Democrat, isn't he? And she said, yeah. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. My votes go to Republicans. And she fucking went, immediately, she was like, oh, okay, whatever. Have a good day. And then, like, this older lady, like, she was in her 60s. You could tell by her voice. It was just so funny to see how upset that made her. Like, we just can't. Your politics are tied into your identity anymore. It's just I don't know why. Was it always that way? And we just didn't know it?
It wasn't as public. Social media has made everything worse, by far. No, it is. Social media is one of the worst things to ever happen to the world, in my opinion.
I agree.
While it's brought us some friends, which is great, it's actually made everything else in the world 1,000 times worse, because everybody,
including an entire generation of people.
Yeah, and it's made. I'm repeating myself, but I just see what it's done. I'm lucky, I'm 42, or no shit, I'm 43. And so, I have most of my friends that I either grew up with or especially became friends with after high school and college and work and stuff like that. Most of them turned out to be pretty far left liberals, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but the thing is unlike the younger generations, they know that I'm not a liberal. Most of them should know by now that I'm basically libertarian, and they don't come after me on my posts, and I don't go after them on their posts when they post their ludicrous stuff.
Right.
That's just ignorant. I just leave it alone because it's not worth it. I'm not going to change anybody's mind. You never change anybody's mind. So we maintain our friendships by, just still commenting on things about personal life, things like that. But we leave politics aside. And a lot of people aren't able to do that. And the younger you are, the less able that you're able to do that. Instead, you call the people, you call them names. If you're a left winger, you call them Nazis and racists and things like that. I did have 2 after the election that said anybody who voted for Trump is a Nazi racist, and I just unfriended them because who needs that in your life? But yeah, it's just gotten worse and worse.
Yeah, the worst part is when it's your family. See, I have a lot of family on my regular Facebook page, so that's why I have a fake Facebook page,
right?
Because so many of them are so far left now, especially the women, that it's like, oh yeah, today I stayed home with my kids and we baked cookies and we did all these well, it's probably because your husband oppresses you. You know, you should.
Are you serious? It's that
I'm not
bad?
kidding. I'm not kidding. No, I wish that was exaggeration, but it is really not. Like, when the Women's March happened, that was just a fiasco where it was like, I'm trying to address my aunt, and I'm like, you know, I don't understand. You know, this is a woman who's like, I'm not kidding you, 250-pound Mexican lady, and she's like, women are so oppressed, and we don't make as much as men, and this. I'm like, you are not oppressed. No one is oppressing you. You're 250 pounds. Stop it.
Your weight's
Someone
oppressing
stop
yourself.
you. Like, my uncle
Gravity
is
is
so skinny.
oppressing you.
You're so fat. No one's oppressing you. It's not happening. No one. It's not happening to you. I promise you.
Oh, why is it
But-
that the ones who are so angry at men are obviously ones that aren't being touched by men? Like, it's, well, I guess I answered my own question.
That's there you go.
Hey, it's the same thing with right wing.
Prostitution needs to be legal, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Because I think that there are men who, I guess, those who are labeled incels, like if you gave them actual legal legitimate access to some intimacy, you know, where they didn't have to sneak around and run the risk of jail time, I think you'd have a lot of men who are full of angst who would be a lot less full of angst. And I think it's true for women too. I think all these purple-haired, you know, fucking mohawked fatties who are running around screaming about how, you know, the patriarchy and all that shit. If there were access to dick that they could just pay for, well, no.
I don't think
I
that
don't
would
know
change
that works.
anything. You
It
know?
wouldn't, yeah, you're right, because they can get fake dildos, and that doesn't seem to, that doesn't change anything, right?
Well, it's the mentality of like, men are so evil and so terrible that they don't want any man near them anyway. So
How do you get to that point? I feel like that's just an emotional response to some guy hurt you. You fell hard for some guy.
It's a lot of that. It's a lot of
And
that. I know a lot of girls that, like, I went to cosmetology school, so of course a lot of those people are very left leaning, and lots of gay, lesbian, transgender people in that field. But a lot of the girls that I went to school with that were quote unquote lesbians in school are now married and have children. So
see, this is what I'm saying. Lesbians aren't real. It's totally
and a lot of them, the story is always the same. Like, I was 16 and some guy that I was dating cheated on me, and now all men suck. So I'm just gonna date women.
What happens to gay men when a guy that they really like fucks them over? Because they don't, like, they're already into guy, like, they can't go gay. They're already gay.
I don't know. I mean, I guess they just move on.
It's like, fuck it, I'm not gonna get attached. I'm gonna fuck every guy I can.
I don't know. A lot of the guys that I particularly went to school with in cosmetology weren't very attached to one person anyway.
Right.
So
that seems to be a prominent. You know what? A friend of mine once told me, and I think this is the most accurate description, way to understand gay men. He's like, these are still guys. It's just they're guys in the same way that men are just these horny dudes, and if women were just constantly like, hey, you want to fuck me, and you could go into bathrooms and tap your foot, and women would be like, yeah, let's do this, like, then the same sort of culture and promiscuity would exist among heterosexual men that exists in the gay community. It's just that they happen to love dick, and they're all men, right? So it's like, yeah, I want to fuck. Me too. But I want to fuck you. Holy shit, I want to fuck you. So it's just this match made in heaven, and then they're just fucking everybody. And it's the same. I think that's the most accurate way to
I
to
think there
view.
actually is some merit to that.
Yeah.
Right? They're just the same as heterosexual man. They just prefer dick as opposed to.
There's just a lot less in the way between them and sex.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Because normally we have
if you're-
to, actually get a woman to agree to that, which is not a trivial task.
Right. I mean, imagine if your best friend fucking magically turned into a woman and you were like, dude, can I fuck you? And he was like, yeah, I want to know what it's like. Like it would just automatically, yeah, let's do this. This is great. And then we'll play video games and we'll watch some fucking football, drink beers and then we'll fuck some more. Like, I feel like that's definitely what's happening. And I wonder too, if that doesn't explain why, like traps and all that bullshit, trannies is sort of trending, I guess. Like that seems to be rather popular now. Like that was not something you could just. Am I still there, or did I get cut off?
No, you're
You're there.
Like that wasn't something you could just come out and talk about, or even express any interest in, or joke about, even like fucking 15 years ago. And now you could post about it on fucking Facebook and nobody cares. like everybody's like, oh yeah, traps, yeah, of course, yeah, dudes with dicks or chicks with dicks, whatever, dudes with tits. It's just weird. It's human sexuality is a bag of cats. I'm not there anymore, am I?
Wait, there you
Yeah,
are.
you're
Yeah,
good.
you're there.
Oh.
You just left us at a loss for words.
Yes, I did. Now, quick question. What do you think about the? Well, you know what? I want to do the curveball thing real quick. Robin,
Yes.
I've got a curveball question for you. If you
Great.
found out that your saliva, that you magically had the ability
Mm-hmm.
with your mouth to cure cancer,
Okay.
right? So if somebody had testicular cancer, if you sucked their dick, you'd get rid of their cancer. If they had pancreatic cancer, if you ate their ass, that you get rid of their cancer. Would you tell anyone that you had this ability? Would you use your powers for good? Would you pay, or charge people for this ability? Like, hey, I'll get rid of your cancer, but it's going to cost you. Or would you keep that to yourself and just be like, no, I'm not ever. This power dies with me. Like, what would you do with that?
Do I have to actually engage in this act, or can I bottle this spit and sell it?
No. It requires the use of your mouth.
Yeah, that's probably gonna die with me. Sorry, guys.
Wow. Rude alert.
Yeah.
I know. Wow. She fucking.
Yeah, hard to agree.
What a misanthrope. You don't give a fuck about anybody.
No, not really.
I think I would actually use it personally. But I wouldn't go around advertising it. It would be kind of a case by case basis. And I think some people I would definitely charge, where others might be like a charity case. So it would depend. I would have to. What?
I totally agree. I think I would totally use it. Like,
yeah.
Dude, you could charge so much, right? Yeah. Like, what's it cost?
Did you get kicked?
Now he got kicked, yeah.
Now he's kicked, yeah.
No, but you could make a lot of money. I mean, my God. And then if it was a really good person, and they didn't have the money for it, they could apply for, I don't know, discount
Medicare,
or,
but for dick sucking. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever that would be called.
I know, right? I don't know.
It
Charity?
FDA approved before you could get insurance money, so you'd have to go
always when I'm talking.
Period. They would probably make you suck 1,000 dicks to prove it worked, and you
No, I
wouldn't
wouldn't take insurance. I wouldn't take
Oh, okay.
insurance. No
Cash
way. Fuck
only.
insurance.
Okay.
Cash
Cash
only.
only. Hell yeah.
Okay.
We could
Yeah,
use the barter
it would be a
system. So like, if
private
you got a
thing.
mansion, you know.
It would have to be a private thing. Like I would definitely not. Plus, oh man, you'd have to avoid the government believing you, because if they find out you've got that, man, they're snatching you up and putting you in a lab. You'll be dissected as they try and figure out what's with this person's mouth. God, can you imagine? Can you imagine being kidnapped by the government and forced to suck dick? Like all day.
That'd be so weird.
Like what? Suck this dick. Like... Oh my god. Oh, and that's going straight to the tabloids. Like no mainstream media is picking up that story. Like I was kidnapped by the government and they made me suck dick for days on end. Oh god. Oh, that's a beautiful story. Robin.
Yes.
Let's talk.
All right.
As I understand it, we talked a little before the show, and you have expressed to me your dad was involved with a cartel. Is that right?
That is correct. I do not know exactly what cartel he was involved with, but he was definitely involved with some really bad people in South America.
Okay, that's what I was going to... So definitely a South American drug cartel.
Yes.
So when did you find this out? Like when... I mean, for sure knew.
Well, for sure, not until I was a teenager, but I was there when he was actually physically busted and arrested. So, a 7-year-old child. So, I mean, obviously,
you were 7 when that happened.
Yeah. So I was aware of something going on. I didn't know exactly what he had done or was involved in because, I mean, I was just a kid. I didn't really understand that. But yeah, I didn't really find out the extent of what it was until I was much older and by accident found out through some of things that my mom had saved from that time period, like newspaper articles and stuff like that. And I've learned more as I've gotten older just because she does not talk about it. And I don't really have contact with my dad, so I don't have anybody to really talk to about it other than her. And she's like, yeah, no, we're not going to talk about that. So
really,
yeah, it's pretty wild.
That is pretty wild. Do you have memories of things like when you finally figured it out, when you were a teen and you were like, oh, okay, so that's what's going on? Did you kind of comb through your memories prior to his being arrested when you were 7 and kind of are there things you remember and can point out now, like, oh, okay, I didn't know what was going on then, but now I can look at these memories and see what was going on? Like, what sticks out?
Mostly is I'm assuming how he transported. He sold cocaine and marijuana. Those were his two main things.
Sold it?
Yes, he would take it from South Florida up to the northern part of Florida, and then I'm assuming he would somehow break it apart at our house where we lived, because we lived out in the woods where nobody would know that was going on.
Okay.
And then he would distribute it to other people to have them distribute it to wherever. So he was like the main hub for that area, and then it went up the coast. And
so he was involved in the distribution.
Yeah. So one of the things I do remember, which didn't seem odd to me when I was a kid, was that we had all these like old military vehicles that sat in our yard, like little Humvees and trucks and stuff. They're all camo painted, and that's how he just was transporting it from South Florida. So they looked like military vehicles.
He would drive these vehicles, and people, for the purposes of making any law enforcement who saw them think that it was a military vehicle?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting.
Yeah. We had about 10 or so of them that sat in our yard, and periodically one would be missing, and then it would be replaced with something else. So,
interesting.
It was just
So
like
he
a
was switching
revolving
them
door
out.
of these trucks.
Wow. Now you said he flew. Did you say he flew them from South Florida up to North Florida where you live?
No, not that I know of. I mean, he could have. I'm not sure. He probably did all kinds of stuff that I don't know about. I mean, when I was a kid, he would be gone for like 2 or 3 months at a time. So I would see him for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then he'd be gone for 2 or 3 months. And when I'd see him again, it would be for a little bit of time, and then he'd be gone. So most of the time it was just me and my mom.
Do you have any recollection of him? Like, did you, as a kid, see any of the drugs? Didn't know what it was at the time?
Yeah, he had like a big gun safe cabinet where he had tons of guns too. But in the back of that was like a fake back. And there was one time where I came busting into my parents' room as a little kid, like excited to see my dad because he had just gotten home, and he had all this weed just all packaged up, and he was like, "Oh yeah, baby, this is just this is some stuff we grew in our garden that your mom's going to use for cooking. It's no big deal. You go on out now. Go on out and go play." And being like 6, I was like, "Okay, Daddy, sure." And so I just left. And when I got older, I was like, "Oh my God, my dad had like pounds of weed just sitting around our house at any given time. Like, that's insane."
That's funny. Wow.
That's really, the only time I remember actually seeing anything. He kept it very closed up in a way. And, we had a lot of property where we lived. So I'm assuming that some of the like sheds and things in our yard probably were where he was keeping some of this stuff.
Sure. So I'm assuming with him as high up on the distribution, in the distribution chain, you guys must have been pretty well off from the money that your dad was making doing this.
Yeah, I mean, we had we didn't live in a really great house, but we had a lot of land. And basically what we lived in was more or less like a compound. I mean, we had these huge fences that were like double-sided. You couldn't see in, you couldn't see out. We had this huge gate that, my mom got real pissed one time, and she had this huge Jeep, and she tried to ram the gate to get back into the yard where all this stuff was going on, and it just like demolished her car. So there was no way to get in unless someone was going to let you in. So yeah, it was we had like a speedboat, we had all these trucks, and in the time and the place where I lived, people used to go out in the woods and like ride their trucks through big mud puddles and stuff. They called it mud bogging, but yeah, mudding. And so my dad had like all these like monster truck looking trucks that we did that in, and ATVs, and we had horses, and we just had all kinds of crazy stuff. That where we lived was very poor, so I don't know how he got away with it for as long as he did, because it was very much like, oh, this person has like this huge compound they live in and no one can get in. Oh, and they have a speedboat, and they have trucks and horses, and where are you getting the money for this? Yeah, no, nothing at all. No. Mm-mm. And even I think about my dad, like what my dad looked like from what I remember. It was early 90s. Yeah, I have a few. It was early 90s, and so that was like the like desperado, like Wyatt Earp. That's what my dad looked like. He had a duster that came all the way to the ground, and cowboy boots, and a big hat. And that's what he looked like all the time. He just looked ridiculous. I mean, I don't know how anybody didn't look at him and go, "What the hell? What are you doing, man?"
That's so funny.
So I mean, his cowboy boot. Huh?
Your dad looked like Wyatt Earp.
Yeah, he pretty much looked like he was ready to go like shoot somebody in OK Corral or something. I don't know. He looked crazy.
That's pretty funny. What was I mean, were you going to school or anything? Were you getting homeschooled? What was the deal with that? Did you have like any sort of social life? Do you remember people coming over?
Yeah, I went to school. The town where we lived was really, really small. So everybody knew my dad, but everybody was pretty much scared shitless of him. So there was no like something will happen to me, somebody's going to take me or anything like that, because he would have known who did it and like immediately would have known. So I pretty much led this kind of like untouchable life for the first part of my life.
So everybody knew who your dad was connected to.
I don't know if they knew who he was connected to, but they knew that he had some sort of connection that lent him power in a way that if he wanted you to be hurt or disappear, that would happen. And it was very obvious that, something was different about me and my family. And even the friends that I had, they were all like his friends' kids. So I never got to invite kids from my kindergarten class. They never came to my house. So they were kids that he already knew.
Did you ever have, did your dad's connections or friends ever come around? Do you remember people coming in and out?
Oh yeah, we had parties all the time. We lived in my dad had like a full Olympic-sized volleyball court built in our yard. We had outdoor kitchens. We had all kinds of stuff. So every day was a party. I mean, it was like the 80s parties with Coke and drugs and everything all the time. So if you could imagine like Narcos in my house all the time. So
right. The movie Blow.
Yeah, Blow. Yeah. It's a lot like my life.
Wow. Did you guys ever travel? Do you remember traveling with your dad?
No, we never traveled with my dad. Me and my mom basically were at our house all the time. We didn't leave. So
did you have were there people there that worked for your dad? Like armed security or anything?
Not that I was really aware of when I was that young, but now when I think about it, there were people that were my dad's friends, close friends, that were always there when he wasn't there. So I'm assuming that was probably the reason why they were there. So
did your mom talk about your dad to you at all? Like where she met him?
No, it was interesting is I don't know exactly how my mom met my dad. And I actually didn't have contact with my dad. Last time I talked to him in person, I was 14. I'm almost 30 now. So it's been almost, 16 years since I've seen him in person.
Jesus.
But I got really big into like genealogy and ancestry and stuff. And did a DNA test not like maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah. And how Indian are you? How much Indian you got in you?
Negative. There's none. It's 0. I'm Irish and European and Norwegian. No, not even that much.
You're Irish and what? Norwegian and what?
European, just general white people.
Oh, okay. General white people.
Yeah, I'm the color of like white paper. If I go in the sun, I turn into a tomato. Yeah. That negative brownness in me.
That's funny.
But yeah, I did a DNA test. So I ended up finding him. And we actually talked on the phone not that long ago. And that was some of the things I asked him. I was like, now that I'm an adult and I really don't care how involved my mom was, I clearly understand that my mom was involved. No matter how many times she's told me she was not involved, I'm like, there's no way. That you were not.
Your mom knew, at the very least, she knew what was going on, right?
I mean, she had to have. I don't know how she couldn't have. Her defense was that he basically brainwashed her into staying and being a part of this.
Do you think that's true? Do you think
that? I don't think it's true at all. No, she didn't get brainwashed. He was already doing this before they were married, before they even dated. So,
oh wow! I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would say my assumption is that she probably met my dad as a connection from someone else. Like he probably dealt to my mom.
Oh, I see. Mom likes to party.
Yeah, she liked to party in the 80s.
Everybody did.
Yeah, she had the big hair.
What? She had the big hair?
Oh, yeah, she had huge hair. Big, like, rock star hair. She was super skinny. Yeah.
Of all the things that make a comeback, I want big hair to make a comeback. I fucking loved big hair. I absolutely loved it. That needs to come back. So, are both your parents from Florida?
Yes, technically my mom is a military brat, so they've been all over the country. She was born in Maine, but they lived most of her teenage years in Florida.
Okay. Are you, now you said that you were 7 when they took your dad away, and you didn't see him again until you were 14?
Yeah, he basically, from what I understand, is that they gave him the option to rat out his source, and he didn't take it. So they said, okay, well, if you'll just give us who you're dealing with in South America, then we'll reduce your years and put you in witness protection. And he said no. So they said, okay, well, you're going to be here for 7 years and no protection once you get out. And he said, no, I'm not giving you my source. So in total, he spent 8 years basically in prison.
Oh, wow. Well, now, okay, so when you saw him when you were 14, you didn't see him did you see him in prison? Did you visit him
I saw him
there?
when he was, no, well, I did. I visited him a few times when I was a kid in prison, but he was in kind of like a transition, like a halfway house. So he was able to have people come in at certain times and see him.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it wasn't like, there were cuffs and stuff on, but it was still very much a situation where someone was observing us and making sure that I wasn't like trying to pass him anything to escape from the house that he was supposed to be confined to. So yeah, that was then I saw him one time after he was out of that, and he was only in that for like a few months before they said, you've been a model citizen and never done anything wrong, so you can be released early. And I saw him for like a few hours, and next thing you know, he's off to Texas, and that was the last time I saw him.
Do you keep in contact with him?
I do now, because I've actively pursued having a relationship with him, but all of my teenage years, my mom basically was like, no, there will be no contact. He doesn't want anything to do with you. His family doesn't want anything to do with you. Nobody wants you.
Is that true?
No, it's not true.
So what the fuck's wrong with your mom? Why is she telling you that?
My mom's got lots of issues. So mainly the main thing being control. She has had control of my life for most of my life, and so now that I'm an adult, it's hard for her to handle me being able to do things on my own.
Your mom sounds like a narcissist.
Yeah, she's a special person. I love her dearly.
Was there a lot of coupled with the whole like nobody wants you? Was it coupled with except me? Like I'm the only one who loves you, and
yeah, it was a lot of that, and it was a lot of manipulation of. I think some of it partially was.
And shit.
Yeah, well, a lot of that, but a lot of it was protecting me in some way because she didn't really know his family that well. And then when they did come around, like the few times that they were around me or I was around them, they would ask a lot of stuff about my dad. Things that sometimes I just didn't even know the answer to or wouldn't even know how to give an answer to. And she kind of saw that as like they were questioning me and wanting to know things that about her, I guess, that they could relay back to him. So
by keeping you in the dark, she kept herself protected.
Yeah, I think it was it was protection of herself, maybe her reputation, protection of me, because there were instances where people contacted her that were part of the cartel and basically demanded that she send them money for them to do
What?
various things with.
Send them money. Did she have like a bunch of money from your dad?
It's when I was growing up, I didn't think we had any money. I thought we were pretty much dirt poor. But now that I've had conversations with my dad, he's like, yeah, well, when I was busted, I made deals with my lawyers that made deals with the FBI and the DEA that said certain amount of the things that I have that are liquidated are supposed to go to you and your mother. And
so your mom just didn't tell you that she had money?
No, as far as I knew, we never had any money. Like, we ate government food. Like, we lived on food stamps. So
you know what trips me out is from everything you read about or you watch on TV, it seems like the guy who keeps his mouth shut gets taken care of, right? Like, you go in and you say, I'm not going to rat on anybody. They take care of you and they take care of your family while you're in.
Yeah,
but
well,
it doesn't sound like that happened.
Well, I have a bit of a theory on why that was, is because now that I've kind of done the research into it and talked to my dad, talked to my mom, what little bit she'll tell me,
Yeah.
I've kind of made this conclusion that my mom somehow was involved in him getting busted in the first place. So she was informing someone to inform on him.
No way.
Yeah.
So you think your mom had a direct hand in your dad getting busted?
Well, the way that it goes, from what I understand, is that my dad ended up getting a connection through my mom to distribute somewhere else, somebody that my mom knew and was supposedly friends with. And then this guy is the one who ended up being the one that was the undercover agent.
Oh, so it was... But did she know he was an undercover agent?
I don't know. It's one of those things where nobody will really tell me.
Man, that's crazy.
So, yeah, like, I mean, I talked to my dad about it, and I was like, you know, my mom won't give me any answers. I'm not expecting you to give me answers, but whatever you want to talk about it, I would love to hear your side of what happened, because all I have is from my mom. So, you know, in his things of how it went, that was one of the things that he kind of mentioned was, well, everything was good until your mom introduced me to this guy, and then once everything was over, I found out that that guy was the one who was basically an undercover agent.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, so, and, you know,
your mom, has your mom talked to you about this guy?
No, she won't talk to me about any of it, really. I mean, it's when I ask a question, it's shut mouth. We don't talk about this. We're not bringing it back up. You want to talk about it? We're not going to. You know, I won't talk to you for like weeks if you want to keep talking about it.
What the fuck, man? Why? I mean, it's my curiosity about that is, it's all said and done, right?
Right.
So why still hold that kind of you know, why still be so, no, I don't want to talk about it? Why still be like that unless there's some sort of guilt factor involved?
I think it's probably some guilt. And she's one of those people, like, even when I was younger and I would do something like in school and I wouldn't make a great grade in a class, for some reason it wasn't a reflection of me, it was a reflection of her, and she would yell at me about how it was affecting her life instead of how it was affecting mine. Like, I'm going to fail this class, but it doesn't matter that I'm going to fail this class because everyone's going to know that I failed and everyone's going to look at her like she's a bad mom. So
it sounds like your mom should get together and go bowling.
Oh, great. Yeah, let's get two crazies together. That sounds like fun.
that would be so frustrating for me. I'd be so pissed at my mom. If I were you in your situation, I'd be like, bitch, you need to fucking talk to me about this. This is my family history. I want to know what the fuck happened.
That's, I've kind of gotten to a point now where for a while I was really, really upset about it. It was so, it was such a bump in my life that I'm like, I'm almost grown. I don't know anything about my dad. I don't know anything about his family. My kids share his genes. I don't know anything about any of that. Like, I don't even know what medical history he has. Yeah, I don't know anything. So
your dad isn't sharing that with you either?
Well, now he will, because I have contact with him. It's only been like a year since I actually have talked to him. So all the years prior to that, I didn't talk to him.
So he why didn't your parents get back together? Was that your mom's decision?
She was already married by the time he got out of prison. So she had remarried to my stepdad.
How long did it take?
Years, but she dated a lot. So there was always some random person in and out of my life for like the majority of my life.
It's funny. I remember my mother when I was, when I was like, just maybe 5. I have these memories of just one, different house after different house. I would spend the night in all of these different guys' houses. I didn't really know what was going on. Like, all right. I guess my mom has a bunch of these guy friends, right?
Yeah.
And like, I'd end up spending the night in his kid's room or on the couch or whatever. And I had no clue.
I've been there.
My mom was just whoring around. Just guy after guy after guy. I was like, holy shit. I remember how tripped out I was when I realized what all those memories really meant. I was like, those weren't fucking outings. Like, we weren't just, having sleepovers. You were all fucking somebody.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I have those memories too. Like, I know one of the guys that my mom actively dated for more than like a week,
more than a week.
He ended up living in our house, and he was like way younger than my mom. I mean, she was probably in her 30s, and he was probably in his early 20s.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and he was just like, he was a cook at a restaurant on the beach. So he didn't have a car. He didn't have anything, and he would like lay on my couch all day. And supposedly his job was to watch me. I'm like, that was so dangerous. Why you just left me some random guy?
Yes. Yes.
What, all these bad things could happen to me while you're out doing whatever, But he was a nice guy. He was fine. Pretty much
my mom was
played video games and didn't do much.
See, you got lucky. My mom was constantly leaving me with guys. I remember one guy. She swears up and down she doesn't know who I'm talking about. But I remember there was this one guy. I remember we would walk with her to the bus stop. She'd catch the bus to go to work, and I remember we walked with her, and it was some Hispanic guy. I remember him being Hispanic. I'm so young at this point. I'm like 3 or 4. And we're walking together, all 3 of us. There was across the street from the bus stop was like a Taco Bell. So we get food, and then we go across the street. We wait for the bus with her, say goodbye, and then he and I walk back to the apartment together. And we get in the room, and there's a bed in the middle of the room, in the middle of the bedroom, and then directly across from it, on the floor, there's only a little bit of space in between the bed and this television set on the floor. One of the big honking heavy ones with the wood.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting on the floor, my back to the bed. TV's on. We're watching TV.
Uh-oh.
This was such a suspenseful tale. Like,
and then what happened?
And then I don't know.
And then we played Monopoly, and it was fine.
That'd be so anticlimactic.
My chocolate. Tessie. Sorry, that's my 2-year-old.
Aw.
You really shouldn't let him be listening to this.
Yeah, he's learning things about his grandpa.
Worst timing ever.
Right?
So
It was so suspenseful.
I know.
You're like,
so
I'm sitting
where did I leave
down
off?
in front of the TV, and then you cut off.
Okay, so and then we're eating. I've got my food, and we're eating, and I'm getting thirsty, and he's got my drink up there with him on the bed, in the little drink holder.
Mm-hmm.
So I ask him, I go, "Hey, can I have my drink?" And he hauls off and backhands me across the face as hard as he can, and I was like, "Oh shit!" And dead silent. I fucking stared at the TV, and I thought to myself, I guess that was a bad. Don't ask for your drink. That's a bad idea. And I just shut the fuck up. And I guess like 30 minutes later, he decides to hand me my drink. But I was so dead. I was just like, okay, I'm not asking you for shit ever again.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of thing that another guy she left me with, which was a friend of a guy who was a friend of hers, ended up bringing me into his room and saying, "Hey, you want to play?" He had this like, those toolboxes that have the little, all the little, what would you call them? Drawers, the little plastic drawers, but they're tiny.
Yeah.
He had one of those, but it was filled. Each of the drawers was filled with like little car parts. You chassis and wheels and the bottoms, and you could pick and choose your parts and make little toy cars. And he was like, "Come, you want to come play with the cars?" And I was like, "Sure." And he would take my shirt off and he'd rub his dick on my back, and I was like, I don't think this is right.
Yeah.
And so like he did that, and then the next time he asked me, he was like, "You want to play with the cars?" I was like, "No, man, I'm good. I'm good." Like, no, I don't think I want to do that.
Matter of fact, I don't ever want to see cars again in my life.
That's the most casual response to child molestation I've ever heard.
Right?
I was like, no, I don't think I want to do that anymore. I'm good.
No.
Yeah,
I was lucky I never had anything really bad
happened to you?
happen like that. No. I mean, the only thing I ever really bad that ever happened to me as far as like sexual things go is my mom and some of her girlfriends decided to go out, but they all had kids, so they left us with this like, I don't know, 15, 16-year-old chick that was supposed to be our babysitter.
Oh.
Well, as soon as they were gone, they decided, hey, parents aren't here, only kids, let's shove the kids in a bedroom and lock them in there and have a party. So
right.
yeah, so we got locked in a bedroom for like however long, 12 hours.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And my mom didn't know any of that happened. She was like basically threatening me, like if I tell her, she was going to hurt me in some way. And so didn't see anything happen.
The babysitter said that?
Yeah.
Jesus.
And thank you. And she left the next morning. And so I go into my bedroom and I'm trying to clean up the messes that were all around the house and stuff because my mom's, hungover. Mm-hmm. So I'm cleaning up and I'm digging stuff out of my room and ended up touching a condom, like a used condom.
Oh,
and
wow.
So I was like 8. And so I didn't know what a condom was. I don't know what the fuck this thing is. So
you're holding this plastic thing up going,
yeah, no, literally
jiggle.
Walking out of my room, like, "Mom, what is this?" And she goes, she freaks out and she grabs it and throws it in the trash can. And then we had to have to talk about what sex was at 8 years old. And I was like, that's disgusting. What the hell?
That's disgusting.
Yeah, I was so disgusted. I was like, I cannot believe they do what? How? And she's like, we'll talk about it later when you're older, but that's the gist of it. And I'm like, okay, so what's up with the balloon thing? And she was like, that's different. We'll talk about that later. I'm like, okay.
What's up with where does the balloon come in?
Yeah, I'm like, where did they use the balloon? I'm still not clear. Were they doing magic tricks? Like, was there a clown?
Well,
they at
sometimes
least?
it can feel that way.
Yeah. Did you get a blow up dog out of it or something? Like, man, that sucks. Their thing popped. Like,
Speaking of how disgusting you feel sex is, you've got a kid on the way. It's your third, isn't it?
yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How far along?
Third and last time. 15 weeks.
15 weeks.
Yeah.
And you've got a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old.
I do. I have a 7-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl.
Oh,
who
that's
you
cool.
probably hear in the background.
I do.
Yeah,
She's
she's
still
not going to bed.
How do you like being a mom?
It's pretty fun. I mean, definitely has its moments where it's not glamorous, but it's for the most part, it's great.
Aw. That's cute.
Yeah, she thinks she's cute. She thinks she runs our house.
So what is I'm assuming, given everything you've said, your relationship with your own mother is kind of strained. There's not a deep connection.
I mean it's kind of one of those things where like she's more or less under the impression that we have a great relationship, and she thinks that everything's great, but she's also one of those people that everything will be fine for a while, and then all of a sudden you'll call her and be like, hey, like, okay, pregnancy. And you call her and say, hey, Mom, I have some really great news to tell you. We're expecting another baby. Mm-hmm. I don't ever know what the reaction is going to be on the other side of the phone. It's not always going to be, I'm so excited to be a grandma again. Oh my gosh, so excited. Because when I told her about my son, she cried and threw a fit and wanted to know if I was going to keep it.
What?
And I was like, yes, I'm going to keep my kid. Like, why would you even ask me that question?
How old were you when you got pregnant the first time?
I was 22. So I was young, but I didn't think like super young. I wasn't like 15 or anything, and I was in a committed relationship. It wasn't like, that I just didn't know the dad of my kid or whatever, but she just was not happy. It was not happy fun times. She pretty much acted like someone died.
Do you think it was because it made her face her own age? Like, I'm a grandmother now.
No, I don't think it was that, because she afterwards, we're sitting there talking about, only one thing I've ever prayed for was that I would live long enough to be a grandmother, which is a weird thing to say anyway, because she's not old. So that she would live long enough to be a grandmother, and now she's going to be a grandmother. She should be happy. It was more or less of like, you've ruined your life, is the gist of the conversation.
Gee, that's quite a window into how she sees.
Yeah.
How you viewed me, Mom? Did you feel like your life was ruined after you got pregnant with me?
Well, see, there's so many things I don't know about that time period in her life. Like when I talked to my dad, he's kind of insinuated that there may have been other pregnancies other than me.
Oh.
But we don't talk about that. So.
Were there?
He will not tell me, because he says if she hasn't talked to me about it, it's not his place to say anything about it. So.
I have to imagine that that's the case, only because if you've got brothers or sisters running around, I got to imagine your dad would think, well, you have a right to know your family. Yeah.
So as far as I know, I am my mom's only child.
Sure.
Interestingly, I was talking to my grandmother just recently, and she was, we were trying to get pregnant earlier this year. We ended up getting pregnant, and then we miscarried. So that she herself never went through it, but she said, dropped the little hint that my mom had, and I've never heard this before.
I'm sorry. She dropped a hint that your mom had what?
Had a miscarriage.
Oh.
And so, yeah, she was like, yeah, your mom was super upset when it happened to her. And, you know, and this is news to me. My mom has never said anything to me about having had a miscarriage. So,
dude, that would frustrate the fuck out of me that there's this kind of, you know, these kinds of secrets. Like, how fucking little do I really know about you goddamn people?
Yeah, it's really frustrating, and especially with my dad having been adopted too. Like, my dad doesn't know his biological family.
I was gonna end up asking that if you had, since you connected with your father. Is your daughter okay, or is she just having fun?
She's fine. She's upset because Daddy wouldn't let her draw on the floor with chalk.
So
mean old Daddy.
Yeah, but I was going to ask if now that you're connected to your dad, if you're connecting with his side of the family, but there is no his side of the family.
It's really complicated. So I'm going to try to explain it to where it makes sense.
Okay.
So my biological grandmother, my dad's mother, and his biological father met, and they had like a fling and resulted in him. So he, as far as I know, my biological grandfather was there when my dad was born and signed the birth certificate, and then took off and went back home, which was Texas for him because he was already engaged. So he went and got married.
Oh.
Yeah. And left my biological grandmother with this newborn baby, and she already had a 6-year-old. So she just was like, okay, that's fine. I'm going to take care of this kid, and it's not a big deal. Well, she was like a waitress at a diner or whatever, and she was at work one night, and someone came in and said, hey, your apartment's been broken into. You need to get over there. She didn't have a car or anything to really take her there. She's kind of relying on friends and neighbors for watching her kids, taking her to work. So this guy that was just at the diner was like, hey, I'll take you over there. And so he took her over there, and he was like, hey, this is really crazy. You're a single mom. This is really dangerous. You need a husband. And they got married 48 hours later. So this guy that married her adopted my dad and his older sister. And that was his adopted dad. Well, then this guy that adopted him, the guy that adopted him, his stepdad, ended up going off to war because he was in the Marines, came back, had crazy PTSD, drank a lot, was abusive, abused my biological grandmother, so she had to leave, and left my dad with him. And by this time they had another kid, so he has 2 half sisters, and she never was able to get custody of the kids again. So he was raised by his stepdad, and then his stepdad got remarried too. So those are his adopted parents that I thought were my grandparents for a long time.
Oh, that's crazy. Crazy story.
Yeah, so he was basically adopted by his stepdad and his stepdad's new wife. And they she already had kids. Yeah, so
Did he keep in contact with his biological mom and dad?
No, he never even knew his biological father. Like, he knew his last name, and that was it, because it's on his birth certificate.
And never saw him after that?
No, he never met him ever a day in his life.
Jesus.
Yeah, so when I got curious about doing DNA, I took my DNA test and thought, I'll never probably ever know. I'll never find out anything about these people. And lo and behold, like maybe 2 months after I took mine, one of his half brothers, his dad's boys, took the test. And so it came up.
His biological dad.
Yeah, his biological dad had 2 sons with his wife that he married. And one of them took a DNA test, and so it came up as we were first cousins, which is when you're half that far out is what it will show up as.
Sure.
So, of course, they
Wait,
didn't
so
know
half siblings? Because that's what you are, right? Like
that
these
he's my half uncle. So,
half uncle, right? Okay.
um, so he was,
Boy, this is complicated.
obviously, yeah. I'm trying to keep it straight, but sometimes it's
No,
like people are
you're
like,
doing
what?
you're doing a really good job. I'm just trying to make sure I'm following along. You're doing a great job.
So yeah, so he took a DNA test, and his wife sent me an email, and she was like, my husband did this DNA test, and we just know our family trees extensively, and I just cannot find you. I don't know where you fit here. And so
did you know?
I knew their last name, what I thought was their last name, because my mom magically remembered it after telling me she didn't know for years. So I guess she figured after I did the DNA test, after I did the DNA test, she was like, well, if this cat's out of the bag now, I guess I got to let her know. So she was like, yeah, this is their last name, I think. I don't know for sure, but I think that's it. And so when it came up, with the DNA match with somebody with the same last name, I was like, yeah, this is pretty much the right person. So the lady sent me a message.
To somebody who was connected to your dad.
Right. And then because I had done, some research into how those relationships look on your DNA tests, that this person was like probably one of his siblings of some kind. So she sent me a message, and I sent her one back, and I was like, this is going to sound really crazy. And, I hope that you guys take this in a way that doesn't like destroy your lives in any kind of form, but this is the story. And so I told her about what I knew about my dad's birth. Yeah. And she was kind of like, I don't know anything about that. Like Jack, the guy that's my dad's biological dad. She was
Never
like,
said anything.
No, he didn't have any sons outside of his marriage. And I was like, yeah, he definitely did. So that's the only way we would. No, he's passed away.
Oh.
So
he fucking dodged a bullet.
So I ended up getting in contact with. She was like, "Well, I'm. Do you mind if I, get my husband involved in all this?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's his family. He should know." And so, I started talking to him, and he was like, "Would it be weird to ask you to send me a picture of you?" And I said, "No." And so I sent him a picture, and he was like, beyond like flabbergasted, because I look just like his family.
Really?
I look like his daughter. His daughter and I could be sisters.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's uncanny. We all have the same chin, same nose, same shaped eyes, everything. Like I look way more like my dad's family than my mom's. So yeah, wow. It's been interesting. I got to meet him in person and his wife. And
was that pleasant?
It was fine for me. My mom happened to be there when we met, so she was not too happy about it, but it was kind of
why was your mom there? Whose idea was that?
Well, okay, so I went to visit them over the summer, and
in Texas.
No, in Florida. I went to visit my mom in Florida.
Oh.
And this uncle lives in Alabama, so it's only about 6 hours away from where we were staying at that time. So he was like, "Hey, would it be okay if I came and drove down and met you? Because how many times we're going to be this close to each other ever?"
Yeah.
And so I asked my mom, and I was like, I know you have us on this vacation and everything, but it would only be like half a day. It's important to me to meet this person, because it just is. Like, it's really important to me. And I just kept trying to stress to her. Reluctantly, yes. She was like, "Okay, I mean, if it's that important to you, fine, whatever."
I don't see why it's so important, but yes.
Pretty much, really yeah. Yeah, I guess, if that's what you want to do. I mean,
but
you're here visiting me, and I'm like way more important than that, but that's fine, I guess. It's fine. So,
keep going on a guild.
Yeah. Oh no, that's always. But yeah. So they came to visit and see me, and it was extremely awkward. My mom was there, my uncle's there, my grandparents are there, my mom's parents, and my stepdad. So and us looking so much like each other, I think was very unnerving for my mom, because you can't deny it once you see all of us together.
Right, like,
that we're
damn it, I
family.
can't.
Yeah. So it was
That's so
awkward.
funny.
And
Pack your bags, you're going on a guilt trip.
Yeah, and of course, they asked a few questions about my dad, which she got very defensive over, and so they sensed right then that was probably the no-go area of questioning. And so
which that's got to be frustrating for them, because that's mainly the area of questioning they're going to want to go to. Like, that's
right,
the
yeah,
whole, right?
Yeah, and I don't have answers for them really, and I told them that up front. I was like, look, I'm going to be as honest with you as I can, because if it was me and I was in this situation, which I could very well be in one day, because I supposedly have a half brother or sister somewhere out there, that I would want that person to tell me as much as, especially with my dad's history. Like, I don't want them to find that out on their own and be like, why, that's kind of important. Like, why didn't you mention that this guy is like a crazy person? So, especially because their biological father was a judge. Yeah. So.
Wait. Your dad's dad is a judge?
Yeah, they're actually from a long line of judges in Texas. So.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
That's
going
hilarious.
back like generations. Yeah, generations of judges in that family. And then you get my dad, the ultimate black sheep. So yeah, that's my heritage. Anybody else as messed up as me?
Fuck, man, your dad totally missed out on not having that connection. Like, hey, fam, I could really use your judicial, benefits. Let's make a deal.
And it was very strange, because the uncle that I ended up meeting, after they kind of had this little meeting with my family, I was like, hey, I'm gonna go downstairs here and just kind of converse with them by myself. Is that okay? All right, yeah, that's fine. We're gonna go. Bye. Let's go out. Let's go talk alone. We get away from this awkward situation that we're in here. I'm one of those people that I don't really like confrontation that much. And so I'm like overly apologizing to these people that I literally just met 30 minutes before this. Like, I'm so sorry. That was really awkward. And they're like, oh, it's fine. It's no big deal. I'm like, no. It really is, like, I'm so sorry. And so we get down out of the hotel where we were, down by the beach, and we're sitting there talking. And the guy that is my half uncle says, when you told me the story about your dad, I thought I would tell you something, that I was actually involved with the DEA and going down into South America to break up some of these cartels. So he knows some of the stuff about my dad, like stuff that I've never seen, classified stuff.
What?
Because he worked for the military. So that was one of his jobs, was to go down there and as a contractor and work with some of the DEA agents to capture cartel people.
Did he ever cross paths with your dad?
He doesn't know. He's like, I don't know if I ever actually crossed paths with him. He's like, it would be hard for me to imagine me crossing a path with somebody that looks so much like me and not being like, hey, this guy looks just like me. But
excuse me, sir.
I have some questions for you.
Where'd you get that fucking chin?
He was able to pull up some files and stuff and look at various things that he knows now about my dad, and he was able to confirm things that I kind of had made connections to. And that was I was like, without being able to. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask what kind of what are these things that he was able to confirm?
Well, see, I didn't know exactly before this, to what extent my dad was involved in. Like, I knew what he did, but I didn't know what kind of people he was involved with, if they just were from Miami or where they were from. And he was able to tell me, without naming the people involved, that yes, it was a South American cartel. Yes, they were connected. Yes, he had connections with people that were very bad, high up people in order to get the stuff from there to the United States. So,
In smuggling everything in, or did he pick it up once it was?
I think basically the gist of what he was telling me, without being able to tell me like classified stuff, is that my dad was kind of like a coordinator for that. So he didn't have his hands involved in it. Like, he didn't travel, as far as I know, from America to there. But yeah, he was basically like the liaison. Once you got to here, this is what we're going to do with it. This is how we're going to bring it up here. You know, I'm going to coordinate all of this stuff.
That's got to be a high position. Like, that's, I mean, maybe.
I would imagine it was.
That's mid to low high, I guess. I don't know. I've never been in a cartel.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's my guess. Wow, that is. Now, you've been talking to. Okay, so let me see if I understand correctly. You went in. He got arrested by the feds when you were 7.
Yes.
Do you remember that day?
Yeah. School, like it was any normal day. Nothing seemed. I never rode a school bus before this day ever in my entire life. My mom or someone always came and picked me up from school. And so I'm at school. It's about time to get ready to go home. And they call me to the office. And I was like a super shy, quiet, reserved kid. I was always really polite, listened to my teachers. So I was freaking out. Like, I thought I'd just done something super wrong. You know, I was going to get in trouble.
You were like devastated. You were like, "Oh fuck, what did I do?"
I was really, I was super upset. So I'm walking up to the office of my school, and there's the lady, the secretary, sitting there, and she you know, kind of gently comes over and puts her hand on my shoulder. And, you know, even being a kid, I could understand that something was off here.
You were in trouble. But
right, I wasn't in trouble, but something had happened. And so she you know, she's talking to me in this very soft, like, I don't want to disturb you or upset you voice. And she goes,
be calm and relaxed.
Yeah, don't panic. And she tells me, there's been something going on at your house, and your mom will not be able to pick you up today. So you're going to ride this bus number. You just take this tag with you and append it to my shirt. And she goes, you're going to wait at this railing, this color. This is the bus number. You're going to get on the bus. You're going to tell the bus driver your address, and they're going to drop you right off at your house. And so did all that, got on the bus, still have no idea what's going on. Get off the bus. No, I mean, she probably couldn't really tell me anything. So,
I mean, you had to be racking your brain, like, why the fuck is this happening?
Yeah, I mean, I was so scared. I did not understand anything that was happening. All I knew was something happened at my house that involved my mom and my dad. So I get off right directly in front of my house.
Were you worried that they were maybe hurt?
Yeah, I thought something like really bad, like maybe they were dead or something, because just the whole demeanor of everybody, even the bus driver, was like, she went and dropped everybody off first. And I was last.
Can you imagine if that's how they did things? Like, can you imagine if that's how they dealt with? Like, your mom and dad are dead, so we're just going to
delay you going home as long as possible. So
since can't pick you up, we're going to put you on a bus.
You're just going to live here now.
Home anyway. Oh my god!
The school is your home now.
Right. Okay, so yes. Carry on. Please continue.
Yeah, she dropped me off in front of the gate to my house, which is wide open, which never was open. And I walk into the driveway, and there's just a million cars. I mean, undercover cop cars, people are everywhere. It's just insane looking. I mean, I did not understand what was going on.
Of people. So, too, then, not just cars, but like a bunch of cops.
Yeah, cops. I'm assuming like FBI, DEA agents. You know, the whole everybody, FDLE, everybody. So they let my mom come out take me inside. And so I'm sitting on the couch watching these people just house. They're pulling things out of cabinets and animals, and they're ripping them open because they're a place that he could have hidden stuff.
You have your dad in one of the cars?
No, they had him in the room, like shackled up to the floor with like guards over him with guns. So, and then they had my mom and me. They didn't have her doing anything. They just had her sitting on the couch. And of course, she's freaking out and crying and hysterical. And I'm just sitting here like, I don't know what is happening. Like, I have no idea what's going on. Why are these people in my house? You know, what is this? Like, my whole world got turned upside down in a matter of like 15 minutes. So they're going through all of our stuff. They're bagging stuff up. They're shoving stuff in trucks. They're looking for things. They're asking my mom questions. It was just crazy. Wow. And it was like, once they got everything they wanted, they just packed up and left and took my dad with them. And it was just me and my mom here in this house with nothing. Everything's destroyed. So all the dishes and stuff, half of them are broken on the ground. My toys are everywhere, destroyed. My clothes are all over the ground. It was crazy. So,
wow.
Yeah.
What was that like for you as far as, you know, with your dad? Were you close to him up to that point? Like,
oh yeah, he was like, it was really bad. Because I was so little, I really just did not understand why they were doing this to my dad, because my dad was like my best friend, you know, in a lot of ways. Like, when he was home and stuff, I mean, it's bad now that I'm an adult and I have kids of my own, but he would do stuff like take me out of school without telling my mom, and we'd go like ride around the woods and like go exploring and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it was always fun. Everything we did was fun. And I mean, I don't think he ever told me no. So if I was like, Daddy, I want that giant tiger up there on the top shelf, which is a true story, this really happened, this giant like $200 stuffed gigantic tiger, which would be absolutely ridiculous. Any parent would be like, are you outside of your mind, child? No.
Right.
My dad was like, what color do you want? And so I ended up with 2 because I couldn't pick between the regular tiger color and the white one. So,
holy shit.
Yeah, and so my mom comes home and there's these 2 giant stuffed tigers in my room, and she's like, what the hell is this shit? Like, where did this come from? I mean, Dad's like, oh, she wanted it, so I got it for her. And she's like, you can't just buy her stuff. You have to tell her no. But
why?
To him, I mean, he was like, I'm never here. I don't ever get to see her. And when I am here, why not spoil her? You know, she's my daughter. I'm going to spoil her. Who cares if I just spent $400 on stuffed animals? Whatever. I got $400.
I think that's a very male thing. There was that's kind of partly how we show our love, I think.
Yeah.
The boy that I was raising, my Christmases were never anything special. In fact, I should say holidays were the worst. I don't know. Maybe your mom was like this, but my mother made holidays horrible. I hated the holidays because not only were we poor, but she would get so stressed out because, you know, there'd be some family get together, you know, we'd go over to Aunt Carrie's for fucking, you know, Thanksgiving, and then we'd be at Uncle Rick's for fucking, you know, or grandma's for fucking Christmas dinner. And
right.
She would get so stressed out trying to make sure that we were on time and that we were presentable. And it was horrible for her. So she made it horrible for the rest of us. And it was like, fuck this. This is the most unpleasant. So holidays were always the worst because she'd get so angry, you know, if we were out of line or if we did anything, you know, just the worst. So when I was raising the boy that I raised for a while, I remember come Christmas, I was doing really well at the time. And I remember I would spend like $1,000 on fucking Christmas gifts. By the time everybody else had finished opening up their gifts, he hadn't even reached his halfway point.
Right.
So he'd just keep opening gifts. And I remember thinking, like, yeah, yes, it's true that this is probably spoiling him, but I don't fucking care.
Right. I'm pretty sure that was
because I
the
can,
mentality.
and I love him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And I don't know how much like cognitively my dad was or wasn't aware of like this could be you kind of thing, because I'm sure there was always this some sort of like unknown to life always for him. Like my grandmother hated him for so long because she used to think he was this horrible person. He was so mean. And the more she told me the stories about like him supposedly threatening her and saying mean things to her, and I'm like, you do realize that the person that he was, the position that he was probably in, that was safest for you. Like she wanted to pry into his life and he was like, ask me that question again and he won't ever ask it again. And
what does that mean? He wasn't threatening your life, was he?
I don't know how serious that is, because you think about what kind of, I mean, not to like justify anything that he did, but
sure,
the position
sound like a bad guy.
No, and I mean, most people would probably say he wasn't, but he was in a position of very high power, and with that power came a lot of problems,
stress. Yeah.
And a lot of people that probably wanted to hurt him to get to other people. And just like when he was gone and they contacted my mom and threatened my mom, and they knew all these places that she worked, and they knew where I lived, and they knew my school schedule, and they knew everything. And they basically were like, you'll do this for me or your daughter will go missing. And so,
what the fuck, dude? Yeah. I just don't understand why they didn't take care of you.
I think it was because my mom had something to do with it. So,
so they were angry with her?
Probably, or they saw a weakness there that said, she's all alone. No one's taking care of her. If we make it so that, right, if we need something, we need $200 to send someone to America, we're going to call this lady and she's going to give us $200 because no one's there to protect her. She doesn't know how far we'll actually take this,
Wow,
and
that's scary.
Was publicly open to know. You look up a phone book, you can find someone's phone number back then. You call their place of business.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, she's not working today. Today's her day off. And so they start building a timeline of when she works, when she doesn't work. Here's her address listed in the phone book. So obviously that's where she lives. And where's the schools around where she lives? Well, there's only one elementary school everybody goes to. So her kid obviously goes to this elementary school. These are the hours of the elementary school. So, how much detail they knew, I don't know. But the way she makes it seem like is that they knew enough to scare her enough to be like, okay, what do you want? I will try to get it for you.
That's fucking crazy. Wow.
Yeah. So I think it was more or less like we found somebody that we can use for our ends, to meet our ends, or whatever. I would say that.
Make your ends meet.
Yeah, there you go. So
now here's my curiosity. So your dad gets taken away, you're 7. He goes away for 8 years. He comes out. He doesn't come back to see you? Oh, you that's right. You saw him at a halfway house. And then he moved to Texas?
Well, I did see him one more time after that. He took me to lunch. And I think just at that time in my life, and him not ever being around me, like I was a teenager, I was 14. Mm-hmm. So he did not really understand or could even grasp how to be a parent or even how to talk to a teenage girl. So a lot of the things he said to me really just were awkward. And if they weren't awkward, they were like hurtful to me, because I mean, like a specific example of what one of the things he said to me. And I mean, being in prison too, you're around a whole bunch of dudes that have no filter and no like concept of what's offensive and what's not offensive. So he basically said to me, basically asked me how old I was. And I said 14. And he goes, so are you still a virgin? And me being 14 and very shy and reserved and definitely much still a virgin, I was like about to cry. So embarrassed. Because we're sitting in the middle of...
He asked you how old you were and then asked if you were still a virgin?
Yes, because he had no clue, like, when my birthday... He would send me birthday cards, like, in the middle of summer, and my birthday's in winter. So he never had, like, a good...
At the time?
And I was 14 at this point. So I don't know how old he thought I was. Like, when he went in, I was 7, and I don't think I ever really matured past maybe, like, 8 to him. So he's sitting there asking me this question.
You were upset because he didn't know how old you were.
I was actually more upset by the question that he asked me and the way he asked it, like, just point blank. Like, this is 5 seconds after seeing you after 8 years, 7, 8 years. This is the first question I'm going to ask you. Not like, how's life been? Not like, I've missed you so much, but...
You fucking yet?
And then so I was like, no, I'm still a virgin. And he was like, well, damn, you lasted a lot longer than I thought you would. And I just looked at him like,
wow.
What the hell does that mean?
He somehow made it worse.
Yes, it made it worse.
And that is that original question is. He took it to a worse place.
Yes, so I am just sitting there like, I don't know what to say after this. My face was bright red. I am so embarrassed. We're sitting in a full restaurant. So, this is like people that I've grown up with in the same town forever. So I know some of these people. Like the guy that owns the restaurant was my dad's friend, and he was like right there. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell? I'm gonna die. This is the worst day of my life.
Right. For a 14-year-old girl, this is the...
And I mean, I was very, very shy. And I grew up in with my mom being like, not necessarily my mom, but my grandparents were very Christian, very conservative. And so, you know, hell, fire, brimstone, if you ever even think a dirty thought. So to have someone then ask me the status of my virginity, and that he was surprised I still had it at 14 was like devastating. That was just beyond embarrassing. I mean, I don't know what, up until that point, if there was anything more embarrassing that had ever happened to me in my entire life. And that includes my grandmother standing in the middle of the mall with a bra when I first got boobs going, this one's cute, it's got unicorns. I'm like, no. This topped that by leaps and bounds. So that was the first question he asked me. And then later on into this conversation, he basically told me I was brainwashed by Christianity and all. It was insane. It was insanity, these things that he was telling me. And so
brainwashed by Christianity?
Yeah, well, he insinuating that my grandparents and my mom had brainwashed me, and he'd also just been in this place with like a whole bunch of white supremacist dudes. So he had been reading like Mein Kampf and all that crap. Yeah, the Aryan Bible, all this stuff.
Yeah, but he spent like 8 years in. Don't you find Jesus when you're in there for that long?
Nope, he didn't. So there's that.
He
very
Hitler.
much went the opposite direction. Where like, you know, my life is ruined, and who can I blame for this? Not myself, but someone else. So I think that was kind of where he was at that point. Like, you know, he just lost most of his life with me. And I have an older brother, a half brother. He has a son from a previous marriage that was grown by then and was about to have a baby. Like, his kids don't call him dad. You know, it was just probably a really bad time in his life, I can imagine. Where, he's been...
It's pretty impressive that you're able to say that and see that. That speaks volumes about who you are as a person.
Well, I mean, I've had years to like cope with this. When it first happened, I was very angry. Like, especially that day, particularly after that day. The reason I did not speak to him until recently is because I told him never to talk to me again.
After that day?
We finished our lunch. I asked him to take me home. In the car ride home, he brought all this stuff back up again. I told him to pull over and let me out. I mean, I was in the middle of the city I grew up in, like miles away from my house. There would be no reason why a 14-year-old girl should be walking alone to her house And he's basically said, no, I'm not going to do that. And I said, well, then you need to be quiet. And we will not talk the rest of the time. And I was like, we pulled up at my house. My mom's standing out there waiting for me to get out of the car. And I just looked at him and I said, don't call me. Don't have contact with me. This is it. I don't want to see you again.
Man.
And that was pretty much it. I mean, that was the last time I saw him in person. And it took me years to really get to a point where I could look back on that and say, you know what? Yes, the things he did and the things he said were bad. But then you start thinking about, at one point he was in a max security prison. He was not a violent person. He ended up in a max security prison in Pennsylvania.
So he's around violent people. Yeah.
Around violent people. Then he goes to a different place. And all the people there are pretty much involved in some sort of identity theft, fraud. So, he's around bad people constantly.
And you guys never visited while he was in prison?
We did when he was local. Like when he first was arrested, there was a correctional institution in the middle of the town that I lived in that was male. It was a male prison.
Mm.
And that's where he was for a few years until they converted it to an all-female prison. So then they had to move him somewhere else. So from there, he went to, and it was a minimum security, not really much of anything. They moved him from there to a max security prison because that's the only place they had for him. They didn't have any room anywhere. So he went from Florida to Pennsylvania, and me and my mom drove up there one time. I can remember very vaguely going there because of just how insane the security procedures were. Like in their little tiny town correctional institution, you had to wear a clear purse if you're a woman, so they see all the stuff that's in your purse, and they maybe like pat you down a little bit, but that's it. That's all they were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
In this place, we had to get there an hour ahead of time. We had to go through metal detectors. We couldn't bring anything inside. We had to take our shoes off and put on like little slipper things. It was because the people. Yes, because the people that you're going to be around or dealing with,
sure,
they were bringing stuff in. They're people, they're gang members. They're just really
right. No, that's crazy.
Everything bad. Yeah. So I'm a kid, so this is weird for me.
Dude, your poor dad.
And so
poor you as well. Like I feel bad for everybody involved. Really, that's such a shitty situation.
Yeah. So it was very odd. And then that was the last time I saw him for a really long time. And then he ended up in the halfway house in Pensacola, Florida. So I was able to see him more often. And I went, one time with my older brother, which I've never really been super close to him either. So this was like, we were trying to bond again.
This is your half brother?
Yeah, my half brother. At this point, my half-brother was still very much like, my dad is a great person. I love him, which was, understandable. He'd been with my dad way longer than I had. And he just could not understand why I couldn't forgive him. And I've held such a deep resentment for him and what I thought he had done to my mom and how he had messed her life up and how he had messed my life up and how he was so selfish. And I could not understand, if you were given the opportunity to say, this person did it and I'll get out of trouble, why wouldn't you just do that? Being a little kid, you don't get, being like 12-year-old girl, you don't understand any of that. Right. I don't have no life experience, don't know anything. And so that put a rift between me and my brother, which, on top of other things, caused us to not have a close relationship. But, so we went together to visit my dad one time. And I went once with him. And I think someone else took me one more time, my grandparents maybe, because they lived in the beach area around there. So they took me one time to see him. And then after that, the next time I saw him, he was out. And that awkward conversation happened. And I basically banished him from my life. So that was it. Yeah, until about a year ago.
Now, were you saying that your DNA test had something to do with reconnecting with your father?
Yeah, because I ended up connecting with his two half brothers from his dad's marriage.
And then they found out where he was?
Well, they asked me, where he was, and I knew where he was. He was in Texas. And they asked me, do you think he would ever want to have contact with us? And I was like, I honestly don't know. I mean, in reality, I told him never to contact me again. But as far as I know, he's been to my hometown multiple times. I've never seen him. I've never even gotten like a letter, a phone call, nothing. I know I told him not to talk to me when I was 14, but I would think after a while, you'd be like, okay, maybe I could try giving her a phone call. But, maybe I should just hang up on me and that'll be it.
He really took that to heart. He was like, all right.
Yeah, well, it was that, and apparently after that, my mom had contacted him a few times and basically lessed him out and was like, don't ever come here again. If you come here, don't talk to Robin. She doesn't want you in her life. She doesn't want anything to do with you. And
man, have you talked to him about what he was thinking and going through and how that affected him?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to him a little bit about it because I was curious, and I mean, now that I can look at it from kind of an outside perspective of like, this is what I went through, and being able to tell him openly, like, this was my life and this is how it went and it wasn't great. And, some of that is your fault. And I hope that you'll
show empathy and sympathy for that?
Yes. And that was something that my mom swore up and down would never happen. So this I am with it now is like, I've grown up thinking that he's this monster, that he's this manipulator. Everything he does is for his own gain. And so every time I go into anything with him, I'm very guarded, where it's like, I don't know how much truth you're telling me because she tells me you're a liar. But then as I put things together as I got older, I was like, you're not really telling me all the truth either. You've definitely manipulated this to look better on you than it really is. So it's one of those situations where like sometimes I have a hard time believing something he says to me, but the tone of voice and things he takes seems very sincere. So, has
there ever been, with all your mother has said about how he's a manipulator, he's a liar, all of that stuff, since you've been in contact with your father, has there ever been about him being that way?
Not so far. I haven't really talked to him a whole bunch on the phone because our time zones are so different. Like sometimes I've texted him and he won't text me back for like many hours, and I realized that I've texted him at 12 o'clock. My time is like early morning his time. I'm like, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to text you at like 6 a.m. But
wait, where's he at?
In Texas. But like,
that's only like 2 hours difference from you, isn't it?
He said it's like 3 hours, so I don't know.
3.
He's further.
Right, that's fair.
But yeah. So I'll text him and he won't text back for a while, or he's at work or something. But
right, that makes sense.
The interesting thing to me is like, I mean, I didn't take major psychology classes in school. I took an advanced play psychology class in high school. I took some in college and got pretty good at reading people and their tone of voice and stuff. And, I can kind of tell my mom is putting on something. Like she's all relaxed and everything. When you ask her a question, she gets very different.
The body language,
the tone of voice. Obviously, I can't see my dad, so I'm not going off body language, but just the tone of voice that he took with me and, being very emotional and on the edge of kind of like wanting to cry, but didn't cry. Talking about the remorse he felt for what happened and how it messed my life up. And, he kind of had this assumption, I think, from my mom maybe, or just in general, hoping that she treated me like the princess that he thought I should be treated like. In reality, it was not that. She was very overbearing and probably could be considered like emotionally abusive. So, having the chance to tell him like, whatever you thought my life ended up like, it was not sunshine and roses. It was definitely a lot of darkness. And partially that's your fault, but you know, I'm willing to move past it. And the fact that he could actually have some sort of remorse for that, when I was told that he would never say that it was his fault, like he was immediately was like, you know, I take all the blame for that. You know, I had the opportunity to make better choices early on and I didn't do it because it was easier to make the bad choices. It was easier.
Is he talking about getting involved in the drugs in the first place?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Kind of the way he got involved in it. But she didn't really go into super detail about how he ended up as far into it as he did. But he, being with his adopted dad, not having his real mother there as a teenager, was involved in some sort of accident that he ended up like in the hospital for many, many days and ended up having all these pain pills to take.
Oh, Jesus.
And so, yeah, so he got home from the hospital. His adopted dad, basically was never home. So he's like a teenage kid trying to manage when did I take this certain pill? How many did I take? You know, and you know, sometimes taking like those kind of medications too will make you just not yourself, loopy, forget things.
Yeah, sure.
And so from the gist of what I understand is that he ended up accidentally taking too many of them and basically OD'd on these pills.
Oh,
and
wow.
His sister found him and freaked out, called the ambulance. They came and got him, pumped his stomach out. He was fine. Well, his stepdad, adopted dad, took that as he tried to kill himself, put him on suicide watch. He ended up getting kicked out of school because he didn't attend enough days of school in high school.
Right. I was just going to ask.
And had a girlfriend at the time, moved in with his girlfriend. Couple like months later, she ended up pregnant. They were like 17. So he married her.
Your half brother?
No, it's my half brother.
Gotcha.
He ended up marrying the lady, the girl, and they lived with her parents. Well, she ended up being psychotic. She was a little bit crazy to begin with, but then she had my half brother and suffered from postpartum depression. So she went nuts. Yeah, she went crazy. And he ended up leaving her. But in all of that, the way he made money being a 17-year-old with no life, job, nothing experience, was he sold the pills that he had for money. So that's the foot in the door that led to everything else. So
that's a trip. That's interesting how that little thing can blow up into I'm coordinating pounds of of drugs to be smuggled and distributed from one end of the country to the other, one end of the state to the other. Man.
Yeah, I mean, we've never gotten into depth about how exactly that process happened, but I
know you're going to end up doing that. If I were you, I'd be like, listen, you got to tell me this story.
Yeah.
You gotta fucking tell me
it
this
will
story.
Definitely happen one of these days where I'm going to be like, look, I gotta know. That seems like such a big jump from I'm going to sell Vicodin to I'm going to be a coke dealer. But
right, for a fucking major cartel.
No biggie.
How do you go from that one to the other? I don't get it.
I mean, the only progression I guess I could see being in the area and the time that it was the pills, and then probably led to somebody who sold weed, and then the weed buddy who sold coke, and then from there it was just making the right connections with the right people. And I mean, he's not a dumb person by any means. He's a very smart person. Later on.
And that's the funny thing about that. In order to be in that position, you can't be dumb. I mean, sure, you might be able to say, well, you're not educated, but you're certainly not dumb.
Yeah.
You're doing some, you're making some major decisions and major moves there. So
yeah, and I mean, he was a very likable, outgoing person that everybody liked. So it was that also was going for him. You've got a big personality. You're a smart person. You can wine and dine your way to a certain place in life, and that's just that's where you end up. Yeah. So You know, I'm sure all of the charisma and everything helped him out there, but a lot of it too was, you know, just the fact of where he started from, with a young mother who's not in a good place in her life, just marries some random dude because he said he's going to take care of her. Then he ends up being a crazy person and beats her and stuff, and then ends up getting custody of her kids. So, you know, and then he, as far as I understand, he wanted a son. He didn't have a son. He took my dad in as his son. And then my dad, you know, just didn't live up to the expectation that he had. So being a Marine, I'm sure the expectation was pretty high. And one little fault in the step of that duration, he said, you know what? You're crap. You're worthless. You're no good to me. So
damn.
Yeah, that's the to get to a point where my dad was out of his house, and the whole pill incident was the catalyst for that. And so then that was just the ball that kept rolling. And I mean, as far as I know, he until maybe like the last 2 years of my adopted dad's life, he'd never forgave him. And then when he found out that he had dementia and couldn't remember anything, he basically made peace with it and was like, okay, the old man's going to die. I look back on it and I have to take some responsibility myself and say, you know what? Nobody made me sell those pills. Nobody made me make that choice. You know, I probably could have done something better. I could have got my GED. I could have done anything else but that. And I chose that, and I blamed it on everybody else. So that was my mistake. And at least I can forgive this guy before he dies.
Your dad said that? He told you that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's just very interesting. Like, I didn't grow up with this person. Like, I don't know him as a person, much less as a father. So yeah, and it's interesting to learn about somebody that you thought was one way and seems to display a completely different person.
How do you feel regarding your emotional connection to your father? Do you feel like that's mending?
Yeah, I think so.
Growing?
It's still slightly, it's still kind of hard to put myself in that position because I've been so outside of it for so long, because I had to basically, to move on from it, I had to remove myself from it completely and look at it and say, you know what, that's not going to affect my life. This is who I am. I can't be depressed about this. I have things that I want to do that can't be done with this being over my head for the rest of my life, which is also part of the whole wanting to do the DNA test and everything, because it's like, look, I don't have any answers, and I can't go forever thinking like, what was it? What happened? What could have possibly gone wrong? You know, and my youngest child, when she was born, she ended up getting sick about, how was she, 3 weeks old? She had sepsis, and she almost, we caught it like in the very nick of time, and ended up staying with her in the hospital for about a month while they did treatments and stuff. But what ended up causing the sepsis was that she had in her where your bladder and your kidneys connect, there's like these little tubes that keeps the urine from going back up into your system. Yeah, so hers did not form correctly, and they were outside, not attached. So when she would urinate, it would come back up into her bladder, and that caused her to get a blood infection. She got E. coli.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, so it was crazy. And one of the things when we were going to the children's hospital, they, you know, extensively asking questions about history, family history, and of course I don't have.
And you're like, I don't know, man.
Right, I'm like, yeah, roll the dice, buddy. I don't know. Could be anything. Heart disease, cholesterol. What do you got for me today?
Jesus.
But yeah, so they're asking questions. I don't have the answers to the questions, and so I just asked them. I said, you know, is this normal? Like, is this a normal thing? Should I expect like other children that I have to have this problem? Like, is this an issue? And
what they
basically what they said, you know, they asked me how old was she when, like, what term was she when she was born, and she was actually almost 2 weeks late, so she was past her due date. And they said this is abnormal to see in a baby that old. Usually it's a premature baby thing, like they just didn't have time to form. she should have had plenty of time for that. That should have been already done by then.
Right, because she stayed in the oven for 2 weeks late.
Right. So they said it's got to be genetic. That's the only other thing. I mean, it could be like some fluke, but more than likely it's a genetic thing. And so then I started asking my mom, who's the only one I can ask, and my grandparents on her side.
Yeah.
You know, just do you know anybody in the family that's ever had liver,
This
bladder,
issue.
yeah, any kind of problem like that, and they don't know of anybody.
So it's got to be on your dad's side.
Right. So it's got to be something from my dad's side. But and then when in the process of doing this too, just because she had this weird thing going on, they did all these other tests and ended up finding out that she had some kind of crazy heart murmur too that was abnormal.
Oh,
so it was
Jesus.
like, I was like, okay, so you have a heart thing and a bladder and liver thing. Great. This is great. Awesome.
So your daughter was overcooked.
Apparently, we had to evict her. So
What'd they end up doing? Did they have to do to go in and attach the ureters?
No, it's one of those things that if you give it some time, it will usually correct itself. Usually it's in newborn, like premature babies, that it corrects itself. So they weren't real confident that it was going to actually do that. But in her case, they corrected themselves. So they just reattached. Yeah, so it was and at some point during all this too, her heart murmur disappeared. So it was just like she was brand new, all good again. And
what the fuck?
Yeah, has never had a problem.
What? Thank God. And
yeah.
You know, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. What did they do in the meantime? I mean, they continue to let her to urinate and let it continue to cause sepsis. How did they resolve the issue until such time as it corrected itself? Or did it happen pretty rapidly?
It happened, well, it was over about a month. So they had her on antibiotics for about a month of straight in IV all day, 24/7 antibiotics.
Did they keep her at the hospital?
Yes, I was in the hospital with her for a month. And when her first full month really of life was in the hospital. And other than that, I mean, they put a catheter in her so that if she was going to urinate, it would not go back up; it would come out.
Yeah.
Which was interesting for like a 1-month-old baby, but
sure.
It was mostly a lot of look and wait. So it was a lot of ultrasounds. It was a lot of scans and things like that.
They were rolling the dice.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it was kind of like surgery was our last ditch option. So it was like, okay, if we don't figure out something, then we'll do that. But they don't want to operate on a little tiny baby.
It's very dangerous. It's
right.
very risky to start digging into kids.
Yeah. And she was already really sick.
And under.
So yeah, she already had that infection. So they're like, the risk of getting even a greater infection or not being able to control the one she has increases.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, kids die on the table.
Yeah, and it was an interesting and very humbling experience to be in the children's hospital. The floor that I was on was for heart, liver, kidney. So some of the kids that were there were cardiac patients. So they'd come in and have the huge chest scars.
Oh man.
I had the healthiest kid on the floor. So
Jesus.
Yeah. And then some of them weren't even children. They'd just been going there. Yeah. They had been going there for so long that even as an adult, that's where their doctors were. So they would come in and have whatever done as an adult, but in the children's hospital.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, that makes sense. So, that's interesting.
Yeah. And I think honestly, the worst part of being there was that on the other end of the floor, like our floor was half, the other half of the building on that floor was the pediatric intensive care unit. So those are the kids that are maybe not going to make it. And that was very rough. Yeah. So
knocking on heaven's door.
There one night when we were there, and it was a teaching hospital too. So there were some of the nurses that were there were students. And
Okay.
this nurse comes flying down the hallway screaming, just bloody murder, and she just collapses on the floor and cries. And these other nurses came over and started trying to comfort her, and so I can only imagine what had just happened. Like, and I'm seeing this and I'm like, oh my god, this is crazy. Like, whoa, I was not prepared.
It's got to be a little
for that.
panicky. It's got to scare you a little bit. Like, fuck, man, where
Yeah.
the fuck am I? I don't want to
Yeah.
I don't want to go through this.
Yeah, so and by that point, like, they'd kind of reassured me that my daughter was going to be okay. There was not really a scary what could happen moment. She was on her treatment, and they were pretty confident that was going to, if it for some reason was not going to fully take care of it, they would start her on a new regimen of antibiotics. It wasn't going to be, she wasn't in this point where she was life-threatened at this point.
Right.
The life-threatening point for her was when we had her at home before I knew what this was, because she had no symptoms. There was nothing wrong with her the day before. The next day I woke up, went to feed her. She wouldn't really wake up and she wouldn't feed. So I was like, okay, well, I'll give her a few minutes. She's like the only kid that will sleep through the night as an infant. So she was fine with she didn't really feed at nighttime. She didn't really wake up that much. And if she did, she kind of fuss and go back to sleep. So I didn't think anything about it, really.
That's not usual.
No, it's not usual. But, she had been cleared. She was healthy. I didn't think much about it. Some babies.
Symptoms to give you any alarm.
Right. And so, like, the next day, we're about halfway through the day, and I started noticing not right. Like, she really wasn't hungry. I couldn't get her to eat. I was trying really hard to get her to stay awake, and she wouldn't stay awake.
Did she go jaundiced?
No, I went to touch her, and she was like boiling alive. I mean, she was so hot.
Wow.
Her fever was 104 degrees.
She
wasn't
cooking.
even a month old. Yeah, she wasn't even a month old yet. And so I immediately called her doctor's office and was like, I don't know what to do. Yeah, and they're like, we don't want you to be afraid, but you need to get her to the emergency room right now.
We don't want to scare you, but you need to get the fuck over here right fucking now.
Right. So, and it's January.
Oh my God.
So it's cold outside. But I was like, I don't want to bundle her up too much. She's already burning up. So we get to the hospital. By the time they see her, her fever had broke, probably from being outside in the cold.
Well,
and so
works.
Yeah. And so she's kind of awake and acting and talking and like babbling and stuff. And so it's like, okay, well, maybe nothing's wrong. And so the nurses are looking at her and like, there's nothing wrong with this kid.
Oh, Jesus.
And even when the nurses she goes, oh, honey, is this your first child? And I'm like, no, I have another one. And they looked at me like, oh, what the hell? Like, why are you freaking out, man? Go home.
What the fuck's wrong with you?
Yeah. Hypochondriac. Like, God, Jesus Christ, go home.
Don't fucking bring your kid in here. Just
right.
You
just exposed her to the flu, and please go home, you idiot. Like, like, dumbass. But yeah, so we're sitting there, and one of the older nurses kind of looks over at the vital signs on the screen, and she goes, something's wrong with the heartbeat. The heartbeat's just not, I don't like it. Something's wrong. I don't feel right sending her home.
Congratulations to that fucking nurse.
Yes. And she looked at me and she goes, it's up to mom. And I said, well, if you don't like it, I don't like it. We're going to stay. So they admitted her.
Nice.
And fever started to go back up a little bit. And they started doing all these tests. And of course, this is our local hospital. They're not used to dealing with teeny tiny babies like that. And they're trying to draw blood from her, and they can't get it. And so it was a nightmare all night long of this, trying to draw blood, trying to do tests. So we spent the night in the hospital. And of course, at this point, I'm kind of freaking out a little bit because I left my house in pajamas. I didn't have my wallet. I didn't have anything. I'm just at the hospital with my kid in the nighttime. And they come in the morning. Actually, a doctor from her pediatrician's office comes in, and she said, I have good news and I have bad news. And I was just like, what the hell does that mean? It's like 6:30 in the morning. I haven't slept. I've been crying off and on all night long. I'm like pleading with God to like leave my daughter alone. And she comes and she says, well, the good news is we know what it is. The bad news is she has a blood infection and she needs to go right now. We're sending her to a children's hospital, which was like 2 hours away. So
Man.
they're sending an ambulance to come and pick her up. And so they get her. And of course, she was post-term. So she's a big baby.
Mhm.
And they're not equipped really for that. They're used to like premature, tiny little infants. And so she fits in this little incubator just snugly. Like she has no room to move. And they're like joking about her being like a little baked potato in there because it's really warm and she's all fluffed up inside there. And so I know they're trying to make me feel better, but I'm like, listen, don't call my kid a baked potato. Call my kid a baked potato one more time. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to freak out. So we get in the ambulance. This is supposed to be a 2-hour ride. It ends up being a 5-hour ride because there were car accidents. Yeah, there were car accidents. We had to go to DC from where we live.
Accidents.
Yes,
Plural.
there were 2 overturned vehicles.
What the fuck?
Car, yes, a car pileup, and this was, I mean, up until we got like to the city part, the ride was fine. We get almost into the city, and it's like just chaos. And so we sat in traffic on the interstate, not moving for almost 3 hours.
Oh my god.
Oh, yeah. So it was like about 6 o'clock at night when we finally got to the children's hospital, and they're scrambling around to get her. Yeah.
And she hasn't the fuck out, man.
Yeah, and she hasn't eaten because she's been in the incubator. So, you know, she's hungry and tired, and I'm tired, and I haven't slept. And, you know, now I'm 2 hours away. Yeah, I'm 2 hours away. And after all this craziness, I then realized that I don't have clothes. I don't have a phone charger. I don't have money. I have nothing. I'm like there and alone because my husband still has to work. We still have another kid. Somebody has to take care of him. Like nobody can just leave him there to fend for himself. So
man.
Oh, and yeah, we were, you just reminded me, we were in the process of buying a house and moving. So yeah, we had just closed. We closed on our house while I was in the hospital, and my husband moved everything out of our apartment or our townhouse into our house by himself while I was in the hospital with our sick kid. Yeah, I was like, this is the worst. Plus I was also recovering from a C-section. So I had just had surgery too. So yeah. So yeah, we're at the children's hospital, and they're running 1,000 tests. And about 3 days later, I look at one of the nurses and I'm like, look, I don't know if you guys ever get like people that leave their clothes here, but I've got to change my clothes. Like I'm so disgusting right now. And so the lady like went around. She's like, well, the problem with this being a children's hospital is everything's children sized. So I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work for me.
They have some scrubs or something they could give you?
They did. They found me a pair of scrubs, and I wore scrubs for a long time. But
I knew that'd be it.
Yeah, luckily they had showers and stuff there because a lot of the parents ended up staying multiple days, and the patients stay multiple days. So they actually had a CVS built into the hospital at the bottom. So I went down to CVS and was able to get some stuff there. And I forgot, how did I get, somebody brought me my wallet. That's what ended up happening, and I was able to do all that. But
okay.
It was it was not good. Just for those few days of where it was like I smell gross, I feel gross, I haven't slept, and I'm up in the middle of the night feeding my kid, and it's like I'm trying to bathe her, and she's got tubes all in her, and I can't hardly hold her, and it was bad. But once they got her about 24 hours into the antibiotics, she started to be like awake and kicking and babbling and taking full bottles and everything else. It was like night and day. But
yeah,
it was pretty scary. It was pretty scary.
Had to be pretty hairy.
Yeah, and so we ended up having a whole team of doctors that were her like personal virologists and all this stuff that came in and talked to me. And one of the doctors, he was just like, I just have to ask you, like, what made you think to bring her into the hospital, like, especially after she broke her fever? Like, why did you stay? And I was like, the nurse there, she didn't feel right about it. The pediatrician who checked on her didn't feel right about it. I didn't feel right about it. It just something was wrong. And they're like, I mean, if you hadn't caught it when you did, she may not be here. And so they're just like, I can't believe that you were able to figure that out so fast, because it probably maybe was like the day before she was fine. So a few hours before I ended up realizing that something was very, very wrong with her. And then just a chain of events that happened leading up to her being in the children's hospital was like, miraculous, basically.
Shit, man.
Yeah, I can't, trying to think about it now, I'm like, wow, I can't believe that all that chain of events happened the way it did, and she got where she was and needed to be. And then everything resolved itself, and it was like, nothing's wrong here. Carry on.
It kind of makes you understand how some people can have the perspective that there's, something larger than life at work here. Like there are powers that be, as it were.
Right. Whatever you subscribe to,
Right.
One of the things that I don't, and I have never been able to understand, because I've had so many different experiences in my life with, like, I was in a really bad car accident, survived that. I almost drowned. I survived that. I had emergency surgery with her where we were pretty much dying, me and her both. Survived that. And it's like, then she survived what she was going through. And it's like, how can you not believe, even if you don't want to call it God, whatever you want to call it, you can believe in miracles? Like, I know people that are so strongly atheist, and they'll look at stuff like that and be like, well, it's a modern miracle. Like, and?
What does that mean? A modern miracle?
Like, because
how is that different from a...
Science was able to keep her alive through medicine, so that's not divinity.
But science wasn't what led you to to take her there in the first place, and to have that inkling that's... And what's funny is I'm saying all this, I'm an atheist. I have issues with my fellow atheists, because I feel like there's...
It's not everyone. It's a certain percentage, I will say.
Yeah,
I've been around them.
But it's a healthy percentage.
Yeah.
There's a percentage of atheists that I feel aren't... How should I put this? Aren't true, in the sense that it seems less that they don't believe in God as much as they are angry.
Yeah,
about
I can
it.
see that.
If you're truly an atheist, there's nothing to be angry at. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't. You believe, you're just mad at him,
right? Yeah.
and this is you rebelling against it.
Yeah.
Is the idea? Which I get that. I totally.
Oh yeah,
I just feel like
I completely understand that philosophy. Obviously, with all this craziness that went on in my life, it's like I can understand why you'd be very angry if you thought that it was all in someone else's control.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I'm in a weird position in my life as far as faith-wise goes, because I consider myself a Christian. I don't necessarily go to church because I lost my faith in church a long time ago. It became a gossipy, just a terrible place. It became just a bed of liars and gossipers. And it's like,
what kind of Christian are you? Just regular?
I grew up
Christian,
I grew up as a Baptist, so
okay.
That's the church that I grew up in, was mostly Baptist churches. Every now and then a Methodist church, but that was mostly with a friend. So
okay.
Baptist church it's very much a contradiction of itself from what I've observed.
How so?
They tell you, gossiping is bad.
But then they gossip a lot.
Oh, but then it's just catty bullshit all the time. Like, everyone knows everyone's business. And did you know that so-and-so didn't come to blah, blah, blah? And you're like, I don't care. Whatever. I don't care that she skipped Sunday school 3 Sundays in a row. What the hell? Why do I care about that? Like, mind your own business. Nobody cares that Sue didn't show up to the bake sale. Like, no, who cares? Why are you so involved? Just live your life. Nobody cares that you didn't come to the bake sale. Like, God was like, didn't see you at that bake sale. Guess we know where you're going. not how it works.
Yeah,
So
last I
that-
checked, I thought that only the big guy was allowed to judge. So
Yeah, that's what they said, but
it's not
that
what
back
they
row
do.
school, they'd just be back there talking about people all the time. Like they just know. They know everything
That's
about
funny.
everyone. So yeah, that's what I was raised on. Up until I was a teenager, and then I started to realize that some of these people I was associating with snakes on grass. You tell someone something in confidence, and they go and they enlarge what you've said and make it a rumor, and then everyone knows, and it's like telephone. Like I drank a beer and I was 16, and I know that's bad. And you tell someone and say, but don't tell, this is me telling you, I don't want anybody to know. It's between you, me, and God. Like that's it. I'm that I did this, and I'm remorseful. And then they go, and it's not just, yeah, Robin had a beer at a party. It's she had a beer and she smoked weed with some dude. And it's like I didn't do any of that. Like I had a beer. That's not. I didn't. What? Like I didn't.
Where'd all
I
this other
didn't
shit
do.
come from?
Right. I didn't do any of those other things. And it's like, okay.
So, quick question: when you said you were raised Baptist, was any of that before your dad was arrested?
Not so much. No, it was mostly after. It was when I spent more time with my grandparents.
Because I was like, that would be hard to visualize, to have like a drug kingpin for a dad while going to church. Like,
it wouldn't.
I don't know. That's worthy of gossip.
I'd believe it if she said she was raised Catholic. Like then I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that was
mostly. They can be like, look, you say you go to confession, you say your Hail Marys, you light the candle. Hey, your whole week's worth of fucking.
It's so much more
sins.
of a checklist.
All good now.
Yeah. So back to sinning.
Yeah.
Back to dealing lots and lots of weed.
Yeah.
So, we're almost 2.5 hours in. Adam, do we have questions lined up?
Yeah, we have a few. We just have 2 from Joel. So everyone else should send in more questions. But we are going to start off with the traditional 2. So first of all, what is your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, favorite dinosaur. I have to go with my son's favorite, which is Spinosaurus.
I don't know that one. Is that like is it a carnivore?
Yes, it's like a huge dinosaur. Lived on land and in the ocean. I feel like I'm getting quizzed, and my son would be very disappointed.
Oh wow!
He knows everything about dinosaurs. He's an expert.
You know what? I knew a lot about dinosaurs when I was like 7, 8, 9, 10 too, and I don't remember any of it.
Yeah, I know. I was like, Land Before Time. That's pretty much.
And then turns out
dent of dinosaur knowledge.
It turns out a lot of what we grew up with isn't even true. Like dinosaurs had
Yeah.
feathers and everything.
Yeah.
Like that's now a thing.
Yeah,
It's wild.
Yeah, we were reading he has a dinosaur book, and we're reading it, and they were like, yeah, velociraptors were the size of chickens and they had feathers, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, the
That's not what
Jurassic Park
said.
velociraptor is actually a Utah raptor.
Utah raptor.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just more of a naming thing than anything else.
I just think it's weird. I wish somebody would make a movie with a bunch of feathered dinosaurs.
Yeah.
What a strange. Like I think if they did, everybody would go, I don't care if that's true. I don't like it.
I don't like it.
I don't like it. I don't want to see this
natural.
over again. Oh.
All right.
Okay.
So the second question that we ask every one of our guests is, can you say "The South will rise again" in your best Southern accent?
Why, I certainly can. The South will rise again.
Oh, that was really good.
That was very sweet Southern belle.
Noteworthy. Yeah.
I am from the South. It would be a great disservice to my ancestors to pull off a good Southern accent.
Good Lord. That's kind of hot.
Oh,
All
shut
right,
up.
what else we got?
All right.
Peanut gallery.
So Joel asks, what was the immediate aftermath, like the day of when your dad was arrested?
Like right after the day after it happened.
Yeah, or like the day after, like.
It was very strange because I mean, obviously all of our stuff was messed up, and I didn't go back to school. And then when I did go back to school, everybody knew what had happened.
How long
like all
were
my
you gone from
teachers
school?
knew. Probably about a week. And yeah, so I mean,
what the land and property and everything, like that all got seized?
yeah, it was all seized. They did allow my mom to keep a few things. Everything else basically was sold. So in auctions. So yeah, we ended up basically homeless. My grandfather had just retired, and they were planning to retire and move to the beach. And that kind of threw a little wrench in their plan. So we ended up moving with them. And we lived with them for a while. And that was a good time. Then we ended up getting our own place to live in a trailer park, which was a fun time also. Lots of things learned in the trailer park. Like one night I had a trampoline, and one night some people decided on the trampoline naked and jump around. So that was a good time when you're a small child to see all that. Yeah, and that was good. Good old trailer park. But yeah, that was it. The pretty much what happened was my dad was gone for a little while, and they put him on house arrest so that he couldn't leave or go anywhere. He couldn't go. Yeah, that he couldn't go basically off of our front porch. If he went off our front porch, his little ankle bracelet went nuts. So he was basically a prisoner inside of our house because he couldn't. He wasn't allowed to go anywhere until he had his court hearing and all that, and then they sentenced him. And I actually went with my mom when they took him in intake into the prison. So I was there when all that happened. Yeah, that was pretty rough. But after that, it was just kind of like nothing really seemed normal, obviously, because of what my life was like before. And now all of a sudden, I went from having like anything I wanted to having nothing. I mean, I had probably a suitcase full of clothes. Most of my stuff was messed up or destroyed. We had a car. That was it. My mom had clothes, and I had clothes, and we had a car. That happened to be my mom's. So yeah, everything was just rebuilding after that. And it was years of rebuilding, and thankfully, had some family that could help out, but it was not fun.
No. I'm so sorry you had to go through all that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes you a stronger person, I guess. I can look at other people's lives and go, you know what, that sucks that you went through that, and I'm sorry, and I can understand. Like, I have empathy for people that go through some of the stuff, and sometimes it does make me kind of like, I don't have, like, this whole situation that happened with the immigrant children that were taken away from their families, and people were like, well, they didn't do anything. Or like, well, they broke a law that's illegal. You can't cross our border illegally. When my dad broke the law, they took me away from him. I didn't get to see him. I was never part of his life again.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry. And then
It's like, yeah, that's how it works.
But it's kind of how it works. You don't get to commit a crime and then keep your life. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah. Not to
like
mention,
I can understand, but
it's funny how they seem to kind of gloss over the fact that the out of the 14,000 children, what is it, like 11,000 of them were sent here without their parents?
Right.
Like, they were practically abandoned. What are we supposed to do? You know what I mean? Like, you're mad at us for this?
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, a lot of people were like, well, that's just mean to say. And, what if you were in that situation, you have children? And I'm like, I can honestly say I would try everything that I possibly could to not do that. If I had no other choice, like I really thought there was no other choice, I would probably risk it for my kids' benefit. But also,
Mhm.
I would go into this knowing that the consequence of what I'm doing is going to be bad. Like if I get caught,
Yeah.
it's not going to be good, you know,
Right.
and it just is what it is. Like if you really are in that bad situation and you have literally no other way out that you can see, and you will do anything for your kids, you'll do it. But you also have to kind of accept the fact that, hey, if I get caught, this is not going to be good for me or my
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah,
So,
I love how you say
yeah.
like people will say like, oh well, what if you were in that situation when you literally were like.
Yeah, it's like no, I like actually know what that's like. Yeah, and I would still not do that. But you know, if I was living in a
And the
box,
reason that you have that perspective is because you've been through that.
right?
That's what's funny is that like, no, you don't understand. I've been through that. That's why I'm saying this.
Yeah, like don't make that choice. You know, I get it. I get being in a really bad situation, or like my dad. You know, didn't have any money, didn't know what to do, was young, stupid, didn't know where to turn to, and made a bad choice. But if you make a bad choice, you kind of have to own up to the consequences of it, no matter, you know,
Yeah.
even if it's for the benefit of someone else, you still made the wrong choice. You still broke a law. You still have to be held accountable for it, no matter who it's trying to benefit. Like you still
Yeah.
have to answer.
Yep. And you have to be before you make that decision. You should ask yourself if you're willing to make that sacrifice.
Yeah.
Adam, do we have other questions?
Yeah, Joel asks, how did you meet your husband?
We met in high school. I was a
High school
freshman
sweetheart.
in high school. Yeah. I was a freshman in high school and he was a sophomore. Or no, I'm sorry, he was a junior. Excuse me. I forgot how old he was.
Robbing
Oh
the
my
cradle.
God, jailbait! What a fucking dirty
Yeah.
ass!
I know, right?
You nasty motherfucker! I'm just playing.
So
I'm playing.
yeah, we met in high school
For
and
2
we dated
years.
for a little while, and then
right? What an asshole I am.
and then his parents moved back up north where they were from. So we didn't see each other for like 5 years, and then we ended up reconnecting on MySpace of all places. And
MySpace, man.
yeah, MySpace. And we
Taking
talked to
it
each other
back.
on MySpace for a while, like right about like almost a year, I think. And then he asked me if I
That's
would
how
come
I
up and
ended up
visit
getting.
him.
That's how I ended up getting connected with that girl who had cerebral palsy. Was from MySpace.
MySpace.
Yep.
Good old MySpace.
You know what I miss about MySpace is that you could connect. You could like connect with circus freaks. I don't mean to say it in such an. It's
fine.
kind of a
Just
heartless
put
way
it
to
out
put
there.
things, but like yeah, like I met a lot of fucking the girl missing her arm. Like yeah, all my circus freaks were from MySpace. Good time.
It was like the first time that people really had like a platform to be whatever over the top or whatever. I remember so many people that I was friends with in high school and stuff that had MySpace pages that were so ridiculous. Their MySpace page was so ridiculous. And then you'd meet them in person and they're the
to
shyest.
such a degree.
Yeah, the shyest, quietest, most reserved person. And then you go on their MySpace page and it's like glitter and, you know, I cut myself. And it's like, oh, you didn't put all of your
these moving pictures.
Like,
yeah.
yeah, and then you go and meet them and they're like, hi, my name's Rebecca. And you're like, what the hell? Your MySpace life and your real life are two totally different people. This is wild. You know,
Which was a foreshadowing because that's still the
Yes.
case.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
everybody's life online is really nothing like what their life is actually like. Everybody presents their life to be much better than it actually is.
Of course. Well, I mean, like in that time in my life in high school, I was very kind of like, I was pretty depressed in high school, but I looked back on my MySpace page when they still had them up. Now you can actually still go to MySpace and find your pages, but most of the stuff is gone off of them. Like looking
Holy
back
shit,
on some,
I didn't know that.
yeah, looking back on some of it, I was like, oh, cringe. Oh no, I said that. Oh, that was so gross. Why did I say that? Like, why would I put
Holy
that
fuck,
quote
I'm
from
gonna have
some
to go
song?
back and see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I looked mine up. You can, I didn't know my passwords or anything. I ended up recovering my account. Most of the pictures are gone. and there's a few left, and they're like really tiny and grainy. But yeah, I mean, you still can get on your MySpace page. It just looks like crap. So
I have to fucking go do that. I don't even.
you can't get into any of your messages though. All the messages are gone. So if you ever wanted to
That's
read
kind of
some love email that you sent to somebody, then it's no more. They're all gone forever and ever. But yeah, we met in high school and then reconnected on MySpace, and went up to visit him for a week and got engaged, and the rest is pretty much history.
Oh, that's cute. How long have you been married?
Let's see, it was 09, 10 years.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Past the 7-year itch.
Yeah. And technically, this month we've known each other for 15 years.
That's very cool. It's it's always a happy thing to hear when people are able to stay together.
Yeah, I mean,
It just
we have a
seems
lot
so
of
rare these days.
appreciation, I think, because we spend a lot of time away from each other. Like 5 years we didn't really talk or have any contact. So it was like when we finally did get back in contact, and it was like, I still have really strong feelings for you, which was, and of course everybody when I was 14 was like, oh, whatever, you'll get over it. It's puppy love, and it just never happened, which was very odd, I think, for a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
I never got over it. And it was very much one of those things that when I had the opportunity to be back in his life and he could be back in my life, it was like, I'm not going to pass this opportunity up, because what are the odds that we'd ever even talk to each other again, much less see each other? And now, it just escalated from there. And it was like, I ended up telling him that I still had feelings for him. He still had feelings for me. And it was like, okay, well, let's get together. Let's make this happen.
See, that's interesting that like
now I got all these kids and craziness, house, all kinds of crazy stuff.
I was going to say, like, it's interesting because, like you said, parents will say, like, oh, it's just puppy love, you'll get over it. And then, like, you're obviously the exception to this, but for everyone else, it's so eye-opening and kind of demoralizing when you realize that they're right. The moment when you actually do get over them, and then it's like, man, I didn't want to give them credit at the time, and I'm not going to, like, actually say that they're right, but yeah, they were right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really wanted it to be right, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, it was hard. It was really hard to go through, especially for so many years. And when you're a teenager and everybody's like, just be normal. Why can't you just be normal? And so you're trying to be normal and it makes you happy. So it's like okay, well.
I mean, did you like date other people during those 5 years? Like,
huh?
Did you like date other people during those like 5 years, or?
I did, and they it was like
just didn't do it for you.
I don't know. No, not really. I mean, and also, like I said before, I was like very, very conservative and very shy and very Christian oriented at that point in my life. And so it was like pretty much every guy I dated, the end goal was sex. And it was like, I'm not doing that. And so that was pretty much the deal breaker every time. And it was like, well, damn, if you don't have any kind of respect for me and you don't want anything other than just that, then don't waste my time, get out of my life. So.
Which honestly good for you.
Like, what age are you when this is going on that you're talking about?
At teenage years, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Jesus Christ. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was. I remember being a teenage boy.
You were one of those boys. What are you talking about? Still are.
No. But that's no. Here's the thing, though. I don't think I was ever. I remember being with girls who they were like, no, I can't do that, and that was okay. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't expected. It was always a pleasant surprise when you found one who was like, yeah, but it wasn't like. I didn't get to the point of thinking, if you're not fucking willing to do stuff, then that's a deal breaker until I was in my 20s. You know what I mean? Like, when, come on, you've had sex, I've had sex. If we're not going to end up having sex, then what the fuck are we doing here? Not to say that that's all we're here for, but like, obviously got to be part of it. But when you're a teenager, I don't know. I remember being in relationships where it was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And it was like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely people that like respected it in a way. Like one guy that I dated was very Christian too, and he respected that. But it was like, you know,
there was no connection.
Right. It was just kind of like, okay, well, if that's not the end goal, then not something. If not, it didn't have to be full on intercourse, but it could be like anything else other than that. If you're not willing to do anything else, then never mind. And it's like, okay, well, that's not the life was not that. So, you know, I think too,
this
just
not
sounds having
like guys without game. That's what that is. Because no, anytime I found a guy, anytime I found a gal who was like, I'm not doing anything, like, yeah, okay, you say okay, and then you just you convince her otherwise.
Yeah.
you don't. You've got no game if you're like, look, if you're not gonna do anything, then I'm out. Like, dude, you didn't put in any fucking effort at all. Really? That was
like,
I don't know.
Okay, so Auger, I love how you're implying like, yeah, I totally could have gotten you to do stuff. Like,
Nope. I was a saint. I was not gonna do anything. Huh?
Yeah, they all say that. That's not something that's real. That's as real as lesbianism.
I mean, I will say it's not completely true because my first and only love here. Well, my first and only love here is the corrupter of my life, and he made me do bad things when I was a young girl. But nobody else could convince me otherwise. So
right. No, I get you on that.
Yeah.
Well, that's it, and that's
yeah,
a good
I know
thing.
you can corrupt me my whole life. It's fine. This guy made me do drugs for the first time. He's such a bad person.
Oh my god, he made you do drugs?
He convinced me to smoke weed, and then that was it. That's all I've ever done.
That's not That's not even drugs anymore.
But yeah, it was. High school was not great for me, but you know, I made it through. No, it's definitely not. No, my mom, I'm pretty sure, growing up in the 80s, going to high school in the 80s, high school was supposed to be the best time of my life, and I pretty much looked at her and was like, I hope there's something way better than this on the other side, because this is depressing. Like, if this is all I've got to look forward to, I'm done. Let's get off this ride. I don't need to ride anymore.
I didn't much care for high school. I loved the fighting.
High school was bad.
Between
I loved the fighting.
I wasn't a fighter. I was pretty much non-confrontational.
Oh man, I ditched school for a fucking fight.
Yeah,
That's all I did when I was an angry kid.
The worst thing that ever happened to me, like physically wise, in high school was I had a guy that stalked me. That ended up. Yeah, he wouldn't take no for an answer, and he pushed me up against a locker one day after school, and like, I'm sure he probably would have raped me if he could have gotten the chance to do it, but somebody happened to walk in the hallway. So that was close call for me. Yeah, it was crazy. Like, I went to school with this guy. He ended up being, I don't know what he's doing now. He worked at a grocery store for a while. We basically handled it.
There was no penalties or anything, like legal or anything.
Did you tell anybody with authority that, hey, this kid fucking pushed me up against a...
Yeah, I told our teacher the mutual teacher that we had together. We had a French class together. I told her, and she was aware. And then my parents, I made them aware of it, and then we basically kind of handled it outside of school, like between him and his family and my family. Because
it's a good thing that you was the French teacher, because was your French teacher actually French?
No, she's not actually. Well, she was. Her family was from France, but like generations back, so not truly from. So she was from South Carolina, so not very
over there
French.
In France, that's just flirting to them.
Yeah, well, he did not take it very kindly, so she was very much upset. by what happened.
Because she was Americanized. That's a good thing.
Yeah, but we handled it in a quiet manner, kind of outside of school, where
That's really interesting.
I kind of understood after he talked to me about it. Like, we had some time to talk afterwards, and I was like, look, I don't understand what you did to me, and I don't appreciate it, and I don't want you anywhere near me. If you like come anywhere near me again, I will tell our principal. You will get suspended from school. I'll make sure your life is a living hell. And he was like, look, apparently some girl that he liked that looked like me had rejected him, wouldn't date him, and so he took his frustrations out on me because I wouldn't date him because he was a creep. And he was like, look, I didn't really mean what happened. I don't know why that happened. I won't ever talk to you again. I won't be anywhere near you ever again.
So he's over 2 with girls that look like you.
Yeah, so apparently he's got a type, and that type also does not like him back. Understand more. He was pretty creepy. I'm sure he's probably an incel, like neckbeard now.
Yeah, that would surprise me.
Creepy's okay. It's just how you present it. There's good creepy and there's bad creepy.
He was like let me get behind you in class and smell your hair and meet you outside. That's bad creepy. Bad touch. So yeah, he always wanted to like massage my shoulders and stuff in class, and I'm like, no, man,
that's the awkward kind of creepy. Yeah, you
don't
gotta be
like that.
You gotta own your perversion. When you're confident about how you're a dirty creep, man.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was very not good. It was not cool.
Yeah,
but I took care of it pretty much with my family and stuff, and between the teacher and everything else, because I still had to go see him every day. I had to be in class with him every day.
Sure.
So I made it very apparent to her the situation that was going on kind of before this incident happened, because he was already being weird and creepy. And then I told him, he had to back off, and we got the teacher involved. And I thought, surely that will be the end of this, because who's going to keep putting themselves in this position knowing they're going to get in trouble?
Yeah.
And that ended up not being a correct assumption, but it became more of like a game, I think, to him, because I kept saying no. I think he really thought I meant yes. So when I said, I don't want you to touch me, he took that as, oh, let me try harder. And I'm like, no, I don't want you to try harder. I want you to leave me alone. And it was like a game of chase then. How can I catch you and make you mine?
Teenage boys, man, trying to figure it out, trying to figure out if there's underlying,
sexual tension that doesn't exist.
Right. They haven't figured out how to read things properly yet.
No.
And it excuses behavior. I'm just making up.
Well, I mean, with this whole thing that happened with, Kavanaugh and all that, and they're talking about being teenagers, and I was a teenager when this happened to me. And I do think about that kid, and I could have pressed charges against him and everything. And, who knows what that could have done to his life, when clearly it's not behavior that he did all the time. I went to school with him. I knew him in a way, and I knew his friends, and, I knew that they weren't like that. And it was like, this random thing that you're doing, and I don't understand why. It was more like, why would you do this to me? I've never been mean to you. I've never done anything wrong to you. I've been super nice to you in a way that okay, please don't touch me. I'm not being a bitch about it. I'm just, I don't want you to do that. But then you're going to go and do this to me? Well, that's totally not okay.
It's hard to explain to women just how overbearing it is as a teenage boy. Your dick and those hormones are, that's all you are. You're just a raging cock full of hormones that's just spewing constantly. And it's just really difficult.
I laugh, but it's true.
It can be difficult to fucking control that. And if you, especially if you're, you're trying to figure things out, and you like we're talking about, you think you see signs that aren't really there.
Right.
I think she's playing hard to get, or whatever. You can. it can be difficult. It can be really difficult, and I can see how mistakes can like that can happen. Not condoning the behavior. Just,
oh no, yeah. I mean,
just making
like
just making
I guess,
observations and trying to.
yeah, and I think about that with that whole thing that happened. Even though I don't think most of the stuff that happened to that lady actually really happened, but I think back when I was in college, hanging out with my friends, and we were horsing around or whatever, like wrestling. And I had a friend that like did jujitsu and stuff, and so he was always doing stupid shit like that, like wrestling around with us, girls and boys, didn't matter. But we were all real close friends, and that was okay. We were okay with that. But I could see how, like, if you in a situation where you are probably drinking, even though she said she had one beer, which nobody believes, you get a little too inebriated, you think you're fooling around, being funny, and someone takes a situation a different way. And then you're not cool with what's happening. So, that's kind of what it seemed like she was describing to me. Like, I've seen that happen before, right in front of my face. And usually it stops and everybody's cool and we all go about and do whatever, and it never gets spoken of again. It's not sexual assault. It's just someone took it too far.
Right.
And the other person goes, "Hey man, stop that. I don't like that. Don't do that to me." Or, I don't like that.
And they go,
you're
I
hurting
thought we
me,
were
whatever.
having a good time.
Yeah.
Then
Then everybody laughs and leaves the room. Like that's
right,
that's the whole gist of it.
Right.
Yeah. Let's just all go back and do whatever.
You had mentioned that you had been, you told me before the show, you had been sexually assaulted not just by a guy, but also once by a girl?
Yeah, I was at a party with my friends, and there was a couple there. It was a lesbian couple, and one of the girls in the couple, she really liked me. And the more she drank, the more aggressive she became. Before you know it, yeah, she had me like pushed up against the wall and like trying to kiss me and groping me and trying to push me in bedrooms and trying to convince me that I somehow wanted to be with her in some way, and I did not want to. So, I mean, being a female with another female, it was easier to control the situation because I'm pretty much equal strength with this person at this point. So, it kind of became more of a physical like altercation where I pushed her. She got upset and tried to she thought that was, playing rough. And I'm like, no, I'm not playing rough. I don't want any part of that. So I ended up being able to get myself away from her and then let her girlfriend know what was going on, and she handled the situation. And then I never saw her again after that. She never got invited back to one of our parties. But it was pretty all right. It was like, okay. And then when I told my friends what had happened, they were kind of like, oh, well, she's a girl and you're a girl. It's not really anything serious. I'm like, nah, I mean, she was
what
really,
the fuck?
Like, she was coming on really strong. Like,
that's
that was not normal.
You know what's scary about that is, out of the three different couples, heterosexual, gay men, and lesbian couples have the highest statistics of sexual assault and domestic violence by a mile. Like not just like, inches, fucking like massively different numbers. And it's insane to think that. And it's even stranger that the lowest sexual assault and domestic violence percentages come from the gay men, gay couples. That's it's such a trip.
Yeah, I think in a lot of times with the girls, it's like it's kind of just perceived as like, I don't know, girl on girl violence is not really a big deal. Like it's a cat fight,
that's stupid.
Yeah,
sexual assault and domestic violence is sexual assault and domestic violence. There's no, regardless of who the perpetrator is, it doesn't change that.
Right. I mean, it was pretty interesting. Like, she was so adamant about what was going to happen between me and her. And, it was basically like, if you don't do this, then I'm going to make you. We're going to go in this room and we're going to do this and you're going to like it. And that's going to be the end of it. And I'm like, I don't do girls. I'm not into girls. That was not a good enough answer for her. That was, oh, well, you're playing hard to get.
That's
and
so
it's like,
fucking.
Mom,
If
I'm
that
not
were
really
a
playing hard
guy,
to get.
like that's scary. Like that's terrifying.
Right.
If
I
that
mean,
were a dude,
it was unsettling. I mean, like I said, I'm a girl and she is a girl, so I felt like if that had been a situation where it was a guy and me, I would have been very scared. But
yeah,
being that at that time I was pretty in a lot better shape than I am now. I played softball. I was a catcher. Like I'm a pretty solid person. I'm a short, stocky person. So
sturdy.
like I'm sturdy. I could probably take her. Like I was pretty confident I could beat the crap out of her if I had to. I didn't want to, but I could if I had to. So I wasn't scared like for my life or anything, or that she was really going to hurt me in some way, but just the surrealness of being like, this is another chick saying this to me. Like, this is totally dude behavior. Like, I expect a guy to be creepy and weird like this, not some girl. And it was like, what? I mean, I told you no. No means no. That doesn't mean I like.
This is why I say, like, the term toxic masculinity, I'm completely against, because the idea that that these behaviors are strictly masculine, like only men do these things, is completely bullshit. Like, do we do it more often? That argument can be made, but to say that violence or sexual assault is strictly masculine, or that the behaviors that they do toxic masculinity are strictly masculine. Women never do these things. They're incapable of these things. These are only masculine traits. Only men are ever, like that. If you can show me specifically masculine traits that women are completely devoid of, and that are negative traits, then great. But if women are just as capable, then it's not it's not toxic masculinity. It's toxic behavior. Period.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It was very eye-opening to the fact of like what kind of situations maybe I personally was putting myself into as well. Like, I mean, I was never really a big partier in my teenage years or college years. It was like, my friends are going out, my friends are having a house party. I'll go and hang out, maybe drink a little bit, but I'm not going to get drunk. And it was kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, maybe I need to be a little bit more aware of where I am and what I'm doing, because that situation could have very easily been a man instead of a woman. And then I would have been
I see.
a freak without a paddle. So it was like, yeah, I would have been really screwed. I mean, I did have a lot of guy friends that were there, and probably that would have been a bad move for somebody to try to pull that crap on me. But the other thing too about it was like, the difference of if it had been a man and I went and told my friends, they would have been pissed. They would have beat this guy's ass. I told my friends it's a girl, and they laugh and they think, oh, it's funny, because she's a girl, you're a girl, you probably secretly liked it a little bit. Like, no, I didn't secretly like that at all. Like, I don't like, I mean, I love other women. Women are great, beauty of other women, but I don't want to be with a woman. I don't want to have sex with a woman. Like, I don't want to kiss a woman. I don't want anything to do with sexually anything with a woman. But it was kind of like, I don't know.
They try, and there's definitely kind of a push to make everyone some degree of homosexual.
Yeah, and I think this was kind of like maybe the beginning sort of that, like where you were supposed to be kind of more tolerant to it. I was in college. It was a lot of
tolerance is one thing, but it seems like there's a push to where, like, come on, you're a little bit, do a little bit. Like,
well, that's kind of how this was. It was, I had a girlfriend who was convinced she was bi for a while, and she supposedly dated guys and girls, and it was like, you're not, though. This is just stupid. Like, really attracted to women. You get a little drunk and you make out with whoever you see. That's really what's going on here. You're not in a normal setting when you're sober. You would never go up to another girl and be like, hey, I think you're a beautiful woman. Maybe we should go get lunch sometime. You wouldn't say that. Like, you would never say that. Would be weird. Like, you wouldn't do that on a normal basis. So you're not attracted to women. That's not what's going on.
Lesbians aren't real.
Well, she thought she was bi because she wanted to make out with girls when she was drunk. So Apparently,
Yeah,
that's
that's
all
just
it takes
I
to
mean,
be
that's
bisexual.
Women are
But
more likely
like,
to experiment like that, from what I hear.
I don't. To me, it's not. I don't. I've
I
never
don't
had
know.
that at
Right,
all.
and that's totally um totally acceptable, and it's understandable. And I think your religious background has something to do with that.
Yeah, more
You
than
know,
likely. But I
um,
mean, even when people in college and stuff were like, well, live a little and try it. It's like, no, really, I don't have that desire. Like, I don't want to try it. I'm
right.
not gonna experiment in that way. That's not where I want to put the effort into. And even like my friend that was supposedly quote unquote bi, like, she'd get 2 shots into her and she'd be like, come on, let's go make out in the closet. And I'm like, no, I don't want to make out with you in the closet.
Yeah.
Like, come on, let's
See,
go,
and
let's go
and,
skinny dipping together. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, that's okay. You can do that by yourself.
and see,
Like,
and I'm not saying that women can't enjoy touching other women. I believe that's real, but the whole idea of there being like when I say lesbians aren't real, the concept of women being strictly attracted to women and wanting to
right.
be in relationships with them. No, come on.
I mean, women are crazy. I don't know why
That's
anybody want to be in a
bullshit.
relationship with a woman. Like, I don't even know why men want to be in
Other women
relationships
say
with
that.
women.
Because they're hot.
Yeah, but they're like zoo animals. They're fun to look at, but don't fucking touch them.
Yeah, no, no, they're
That's where all the
dangerous, man.
problems start.
They'll ruin your life.
They can.
But
They fucking can.
I mean, I don't know. I don't understand the attraction. Like, I think other women are beautiful, and I can appreciate people's features and everything, but I don't
I don't know.
have an
I'm a believer
attraction there,
in the
which is
Kinsey scale.
crazy.
I think the majority of people. I think you fall on the extreme, left side of the scale where you're pretty much, if not just mostly heterosexual, then all heterosexual. Although Kinsey does say that nobody's 100% gay or 100% hetero.
Is that
It can't be
was that a
100%
real
anything.
thing? Or was it just like that there are people that exhibit different percentages of those?
Yeah,
Did he
people,
flat out deny the
people,
existence of people that are exclusively? Because that's a thing on the scale. Like, there's a 0 and a 7.
There is, and I think he said that the majority of people fall somewhere in the middle. It's a rare. I could be wrong. Him saying that there's absolutely no one who's 100% one way or the other, but I think it was
like if he didn't think those people existed, why put them on the scale? Like, why put a space?
No,
for
you're
them
right.
on,
You're
like,
absolutely
on
right.
His own scale.
Well, I mean, every scale you got to have a baseline for everything. But you're right. I think definitely there's probably 100% one way or the other. But I think it was definitely a rarity. I think is what he was saying. Like, everybody's a little bit this way or that way. At least that's and I believe that just from my own personal experience. But you would fall, on one end of the scale, obviously. Which is totally fine. I think the majority of women who are kissing other girls is mostly for the benefit of men, Like, it's a way to get guys to pay attention to them.
Yeah, and I think for her, that's probably really what it was, because we had a lot of male friends. Like, it was mostly just me and her were the 2 girls, and everybody else were guys. So, I think it was a lot of attention seeking, especially at the age that we were in, where that's kind of a thing. Like, when you're in your late teens, early 20s, like, attention is what you're really craving. So, I think a lot of it was, let's do this because the guys will like it. And it's like, I don't give a crap what the guys like. Like, I'm not gonna be with any of these dudes. Like, I don't want to sleep with any of my guy friends. Why would I tease them in a way that's outwardly mean? Like,
and that's very kind of you. And at the same time, it really puts into perspective just how much I'm grateful to the Lord for making sluts. Like, there's a purpose for everything. and I'm grateful.
It wasn't my calling. It wasn't my calling.
No, and that's okay. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We need a lot of women like you anyway. We need women who are, family oriented, who are having kids, keeping things going. Family structure is important. That's a good thing.
Someone's got to do it because not enough people are doing it. So
no, you're right. Our birth rates are declining, and it's kind of it's a problem. And
did he cut out?
I think so. Went all that time just right now.
Man, yeah. He probably snuck a few, but all right, let's just talk crap about him while he's gone. All right, everyone in chat, post your least favorite thing about Auger.
Is anybody in chat?
I don't even know. We have, I think, 6
So,
guests.
It's late. Go to bed.
Yeah. Where do you live again? Like, what time zone?
It's East Coast where I am.
Ah, okay. So it's late for you.
Yeah. I need to go.
It's always when I'm talking. It's always when I'm fucking talking. But yeah, no, I was saying, like, I support the church because it's, it promotes the family structure, the standard family structure, the only organization that really is promoting and supporting that anymore. And I feel that the family structure is tied into society and culture. You break down one, you break down the others. So I may be an atheist, but I completely support the church. And I think more people need to go to church. I think more people need to be starting families, staying a family, raising families. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. All right, I think we got to wrap it up. It is 12:15
I think you're right.
My time. And even later in Robin's area.
So. I know. Robin, thank you so much. We didn't even get to touch on everything I wanted to touch on. And it's just, I say that every time, but it never ceases to amaze me how much we can end up having to discuss and every time, each of you, the guests, I mean, always are always worried, like, I don't know if I've got enough to talk about. I don't think I'm that interesting. You're more interesting than you know. And this was so interesting, and I really appreciate you sticking around for as long as you did. I didn't expect us to run as late as we did, so thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you to my co-hosts. Thank you, Adam, Sativa, Mac, Joel, and Nicole. As always, it's the show would be nothing without you. And the same goes for you, the audience. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. And we're going to go ahead and call it a night. Tune in next time.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, and go home.